Welcome to our special council meeting of November 16th, 2022 with our new city council. This meeting has been called for a number of specific purposes as set out on the meeting agenda originally published on Thursday, November 10th. Under council's meeting rules, no other new business can be considered at this special meeting. We will begin the meeting with the city clerk calling the roll for attendance at today's meeting.
Members of council, I will call your name. Please indicate your presence. Councillor Tour. Present. Councillor Singh. Present. Councillor Fortini. Present. Councillor Power. Present. Councillor Medeiros.
Here.
Present. Councillor Keenan.
Present.
Present. Councillor Paleshi. Present. Councillor Brar. Present. Councillor Vicente. Present. Councillor Santos. Present. And Mayor Brown is present. All 11 members are present, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Thank you. We're now at item 2, approval of the agenda. We've got some clerk updates for further agenda revisions.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Mayor, just a few updates. There was a further revised agenda that was published about an hour and a half ago with some additional matters related to business already listed on today's special council meeting. In regard to item 5.3, there's correspondence from Build that was published with the revised agenda yesterday. There's additional correspondence from Castles, from Marissa Keating on behalf of Daniels HR Corporation. And this is in regards to the statutory public notice item on today's agenda regarding possible amendments to the official plan in regard to parkland related matters. Also, we have a delegation 5.4 on today's agenda from Ram Subramanian from the Sanath Maharaj Mandir. And this again is in regards to the statutory public notice item on today's meeting agenda. And finally, we have an added delegation from Sylvia Roberts, Brampton resident, and this is in regards to item 6.2 on today's agenda regarding the 2022 to 2026 City Council governance structure and proposed committee structure and appointments, and that's identified as delegation 5.5.
We also have some revisions to the order of the agenda, I believe. I have it here. A request from Councillor Singh to bring up item 6.1 and 6.2.
That's after the statutory public.
Okay.
That's delegation.
Okay. Okay, then we have a motion moved by Councillor Singh, seconded by Councillor Paleshi to approve the agenda. Oh, and Councillor Keenan would like to refer the fireworks motion to Committee of Council along with the staff report that was done on that topic. Because of the delegations that are coming next week. Okay, we have a motion moved by Councillor Singh, seconded by Councillor Paleshi. Anyone on the board? No. So, all those in favor? Motion carries. We're now at item 3, declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Does any member have a declaration of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act for any matter to be considered on today's agenda? Hearing none, the clerk will so note for the meeting minutes. Statutory public meeting items. Our next section of today's agenda is statutory public meeting items in regards to the proposed amendment to the parkland dedication policies of the official plan. This is a public meeting held in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act of Ontario. Today we have a city-initiated proposal for a statutory public meeting. The intent of the public meeting is to receive submissions from the public regarding this proposal. Given we may have persons watching this meeting through the city live stream, we will have staff present the proposal subject to statutory public meeting. After receiving any pre-registered delegations, member of council may ask questions for clarification, but will not engage in debate on the proposal at this time. Council consideration of the proposal will occur at the future meeting when planning staff bring forward the final recommendation report on each proposal. We'll now proceed to consider the one item on today's statutory public meeting agenda. After consideration of these public items, the committee will deal with the balance of the agenda on today's special meeting agenda.
So Through you, Mr. Mayor, this first item is item 4.1, proposed amendment to the parkland dedication policies of the official plan. There are a couple of staff presentations, and before that, there'll be an introduction, I believe, by Commissioner Caladine, by Ed, that will introduce the matter, and then there is a consultant presentation, and that'll be followed by, excuse me, a staff presentation, and we have one registered delegation. We'll also ask if there is anybody in the audience that wishes to speak after the registered delegation, and there is correspondence identified as 5.3 on today's agenda.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'd like to reference 4.1, the statutory public notice to amend the OP, the official plan. As Peter stated, we'll have a consultant, Rob Palmer from the Planning Partnership, which helped develop our Parks Plan 2041. And then, as Peter has stated, a staff presentation will follow later. If Ron is on.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we're just confirming Ron was connected, but he was not. There was a technical issue, and he's dropped off, and we're just waiting for him to rejoin. So he's not present at the moment. So through you, Mr. Chair, one option might be to either proceed with the staff presentation first, or to stand this item down and wait for Mr. Palmer to reconnect to the meeting.
Okay, so the question is to stand item down?
Through the chair, if I could recommend that Claudia is on to speak to the staff presentation. Possibly that could be before the third-party consultant. If Claudia is on.
Okay. That work for council?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Yes, I am on. So I do have a few slides to present. Oh, sorry.
Is council in alignment of having the staff presentation first? Yes, Councillor Pelletier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, through you to the clerk, I guess my only issue with that is if the consultant still isn't able to reconnect, then we're still standing the item down until we hear from the consultant. So I guess what I'd rather do is stand the entire item down, wait to see if we can get the consultant back online, to see if we can have the whole presentation, because I do have questions, and I'm not going to know where to ask my questions if we have two separate delegations for a report.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I am seeing a text right now that Ron Palmer is trying to reconnect at the moment, and hopefully we'll have resolved the technical issue. So we could just wait a few seconds just to see if he reconnects, and then if he does, then we can proceed with that presentation second, or if he is reconnected, we can deal with him first, which was the intended order. Just waiting to see if he's connecting.
Let's just stand down.
Okay, why don't we stand it down until we get able to find the consultant, and we can come back to this once the clerk has identified we found the consultant. That takes our next item, would be delegations and staff presentations. Item 5.1, a staff presentation from the City Clerk's office regarding the appointment process for the 3 additional regional councillors and 1 alternate member of regional council. We also have the related staff report 6.1 regarding the 2023 council and committee meeting schedule and process for appointment of additional regional councillors and alternate regional councillor. And to Councillor Singh, is now the time that you'd like to bring forward the additional items?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to members of council, this is just a very brief presentation to provide an overview of the part of the report on the agenda regarding the appointment process for the 3 additional regional councillors and then the alternate regional councillor, and a provision in the region appeal procedure bylaw regarding proxy holder provisions. So I'll be very brief, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions. If we can go to the next slide, please, Charlotte. So just want to recap what's in Council's procedure bylaw. This has been in the bylaw for a number of years for the appointment of the one additional regional councillor. So there are some rules set out for that appointment process, and the general rules are that all members present shall be permitted to vote. So it doesn't matter if a person is a nominee or not, they are permitted to vote, a member of council. A member who does abstain, though, from voting during one of the rounds would be prevented from voting in any subsequent rounds, should there be subsequent rounds of voting. Candidates do not need to be present to stand for appointment, and candidates may withdraw from standing for appointment after any vote. And a person can nominate themselves, a city councillor, or another member of council can nominate a city councillor. It's open to everyone to nominate. We can go to the next slide, please. So the procedures would be the clerk, if council wishes to proceed, that the clerk calls for nominations by or for city councillors to stand for appointment. The nominations will be open. I'll leave it open for a little bit, and then I will close it, giving 3 warnings. And then depending on how many nominations are put forward, it will determine whether or not council proceeds to a voting process or not. If there is a voting process, every nominated candidate will be given an opportunity to speak, and that order of speaking will be drawn by lot by the clerk's office. And then finally, when it comes to voting, the clerk will call each candidate's name alphabetically by surname, and each member will rise to record their vote for that member. Each member may vote for up to 1 fewer than the number of candidates per round, and the clerk records the vote and announces the results at the end of each round. We can go to the next slide, please. So the rounds of voting at the end of each round, the candidate receiving the fewest number of votes is dropped from the ballot for subsequent rounds of voting. If there is a tie for the fewest number of votes, the procedure bylaw says the clerk shall draw the name of the person to be excluded from the subsequent round of voting. For each subsequent round of voting, a maximum number of votes per member is 1 fewer than the number of candidates remaining. And at the end of each round, the clerk will announce the results, and a member who is still a candidate may choose and be provided the opportunity to continue or to withdraw from the voting process. For final results, if at the end of any round of voting, a candidate receives a majority of the votes, so a majority is a majority of the 11 members that are casting their ballot, so 6 or more on that, then the candidate will be declared the successful candidate until 3 candidates are selected, and a bylaw will be adopted to appoint the 3 additional regional councillors. If there is a final round of voting and it ends in a tie, then the procedure bylaw says the clerk shall draw the unsuccessful candidate's name by lot. And then all votes are part of there is no secret voting, all votes are part of the public record. Go on to the next slide, please. So I just want to talk a moment about the alternate regional councillor. This is a new provision that was put in place with the last term of council. It's enabled by by Section 268 of the Municipal Act, which allows a lower tier municipality to appoint another member who's not a full-fledged member of the upper tier municipality to periodically attend the upper tier regional council meeting if there is a temporary or periodic absence by a regional councillor, with appropriate notification provided. The appointment process that's being recommended, it's in the procedure bylaw, is similar to the process I just went through with the appointment of the additional regional councillors. But I do want to draw council's attention that there is a provision in the region appeal procedure bylaw which allows for what's called a proxy holder provision. This is a new provision in the Municipal Act that came into effect in 2020. There was a report brought to council last term that talked about this, and at the time council decided they didn't want to put that in place for Brampton City Council, but the Region Appeal Council did put this in place. And essentially what it means is if a member of Regional Council cannot attend a Regional Council scheduled meeting, that Regional Councillor, with notice given to the Regional Clerk, the City Clerk, all members of Regional Council for that municipality, and the Regional Chair, can appoint another member of the Regional Council from that municipality to have a proxy vote on their behalf. And what that would mean is when there is a time for voting at regional council around that table, that regional councillor, the appointing member of, the proxy holder, I'll call that person, so the member that's received the proxy will be entitled to vote for themselves as a regional councillor and also to vote on behalf of the appointing member. So that is a provision that is allowed. The only provision that I will point out is that the appointing member who is absent from that meeting as appointed their proxy to another regional councillor is not counted for quorum. So the quorum provisions of the Region Appeal Council still have to be maintained. So what we'll call the proxy holder is only counted as 1 for the purpose of quorum, but may count for 2 for the purpose of voting. We have confirmed and conferred with the Region Appeal Clerk's Office on this. So the report that accompanies this presentation speaks to 3 options that are available for Council. Council can decide to just proceed with the alternate member appointment as they did the last term. Council could decide not to proceed with that and rely on the proxy holder provisions that are set out in the Region Appeal bylaw, or Council can decide to do both. If Council decides to do both, that's fine. The one thing that an alternate member who may be appointed by this Council cannot do is that an alternate member cannot assign a proxy. So that is written in the Region Appeal bylaw. So that member will have to attend in a periodic absence from another duly appointed or duly elected member of Regional Council. I think that's about it. So unless there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer any questions on this process before Council considers that report.
Nope. Councillor Singh.
I didn't have questions about this. I was just gonna ask to do something after, so I'll let Councillor Santos speak.
Councillor Santos.
Thank you so much for you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question. If the both option is chosen, which I actually like, because, for example, I'll ask the question, Mr. Clerk, what is the deadline to submit the alternate to be in place in that seat at the region in order for the clerk at the region to acknowledge the alternate in that seat?
Thank you for that question, Councillor, and through you, Mr. Mayor. There is no timed deadline that is in the region's procedure bylaw or Brampton's procedure bylaw if it applies to the alternate member. The provision is before the meeting starts.
Okay.
So it's been interpreted, as I understand, by the regional clerk as it should be as early as possible, so enough notice can be provided to the fellow regional councillors as well as to the regional chair and things like that. But we know circumstances arrive, but there may be a periodic late absence. And as long as that occurs before the meeting starts, then that should be fine.
And is it the same rule that applies on the proxy voting as well?
It is. That's how I read the provisions of the Region Appeal Procedure Bylaw in relation to proxy holders.
Okay, because I think that the proxy voting option is also a good backup plan for us to ensure that we have enough voices at the table. Should the alternate last minute not be able to make it or say to us 24 hours before, I can't be there because of X, Y, and Z. We've seen this happen at the regional table a number of times, and so it's good just to have that backup plan.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So just to clarify, if council does proceed down to what we call option 3 with an alternate and the proxy holder, so if there is an alternate that is appointed by this council, as I mentioned before, that alternate cannot assign a proxy to another member of council if they're standing in for an absent regional councillor. And there was another provision and I just lost it. So, but there are some limitations on that alternate member, I should say. But you can concurrently, council could have 2 members of regional council that are absent from a regional council meeting. So one member could be a proxy holder, so is entitled to 2 votes, and the alternate member is participating as well.
Okay, Councillor Medeiros.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So regarding, I guess, the provision of the alternate regional councillor and or proxy holder, I guess then it would kick in, so follow me through the steps. So I can't make regional council, and if I notify in time, then the alternate can jump in. If I don't notify in time, then, and that person's not available, then I can attribute my proxy to one of the councillors.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, with appropriate notice. So Charlotte, maybe if you can go back to the slide on the proxy holder provisions and the alternate. It's the next one, yeah. So the process to appoint a proxy holder, which is at the last main bullet, is appointing a member, the appointing member who will be absent notifies in writing the clerk, regional clerk, proxy holder, excuse me, and the regional chair prior to the start of the regional council meeting. And then the clerk will notify the Brampton regional councillors to ensure that they understand that there's going to be somebody else with an assigned vote. And if the appointing member wishes to revoke the proxy, if all of a sudden they were absent and all of a sudden they can attend the meeting, they have to give that revocation prior to the start of the meeting. Otherwise, my assumption, but I would rely on the regional clerk on this, providing advice to regional council, is once that proxy is assigned, it's assigned once the meeting starts.
Yeah, and through you, Mr. Mayor, and I know through, I guess, seeing what Mississauga did, they would specify, so for example, I would specify which councillor I can give my proxy to.
That's correct.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Yeah. The only one you could not give the proxy to would be the alternate member, if there is an alternate member.
Understand. Thank you.
Okay, so we, Councillor Singh.
So, if we can, I'd like to move 6.1 and 6.2 to start the selection process. And my discussion items on regional councillor and the committees as well.
So that's bringing up 6.1 and 6.2 and 7.13 and 7.14, correct?
Yeah. And there is a series of motions. And first of all, I'd like to start by waiving the procedural bylaw because we have a lot of appointments to make. So if people are against them, they can vote against them. But that'll be my first motion, seconded by Councillor Vicente.
Okay. I'll move to waive the procedural bylaw, moved by Councillor Singh and Councillor Vicente, or is it Councillor Pleshy on the screen?
So it doesn't matter.
Okay. Councillor Vicente. Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion carries.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, then following Councillor Singh's motion, the next motion would be motion 2, because the temporary suspension of the rules has carried. And just bring it up on the screen. So this, Councillor Singh, I'll leave it to you to introduce the motion.
Sure, it's just appointments of 3 councillors and myself as appointment. The motion is in front of you, and yeah, thank you.
Councillor Pleshy, you want to speak to that? I do. Okay, Councillor Pleshy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Mr. Mayor, through you, it's been 8 years of not having fair representation of the 2 largest wards in the city of Brampton. So that being said, and prior to my 8 years, there was a former councillor that sat in this chair that didn't have that representation as well. So today it's my true honor to actually have somebody that not only wants it, but somebody that is so extraordinary, that is so intelligent and respected by both wards 2 and 6. Councillor Brar, it is my honor today to second this motion to have you sit with us at Regional Council, and I know that we're going to do some fantastic things for wards 2 and 6. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councillor Medeiros.
Yeah, I think, Councillor Pleshy, we're going to have a little debate here because I think Wards 3 and 4 are really it's a positive addition to have another regional seat, that voice we need downtown, and certainly I think a lot's been expressed by the mayor yesterday of someone who brings, I'm just speaking with him, someone who's from the business sector, he has a different mindset, he brings a fresh perspective, and I'm really looking forward to having another voice at the table so we can advocate for the needs of Wards 3 and 4. And also from the downtown perspective, now you have 4 councillors who really support the downtown. So if we can't get it right this time, we'll never have that opportunity to really put those resources that we need. So welcome and fully supportive specifically of my city councillor who's now a regional councillor, so welcome. Thank you.
Okay. Seeing no other comments, I'll just add, great to see City Councillor Rowena Santos nominated again as well, who has a giant heart for the city and a tremendous amount of courage to do what is right. So I think that's also another inspired selection. Sorry, Councillor Vicente, I beat you to. I didn't see your name, so okay, Councillor Vicente.
Yeah, I'm very happy to see Councillor Santos' name also here on the motion. Councillor Santos, in the 4 years that she did represent us at the region on behalf of Wards 1 and 5, was instrumental in bringing a number of important initiatives to the region of Peel and to benefit the residents of the city of Brampton. For example, initiatives on gender-based violence, initiatives to help the downtown and the businesses there that are dealing with a lot of the effects of homelessness and poverty there, and so I'm very happy to be able to represent wards 1 and 5 together with Councillor Santos, and to be able to say to our residents that for the downtown, we have 2 regional councillors that will be pushing initiatives and doing good things for them in our city.
The recorded vote has been requested. No other speakers. Over to the clerk.
All members of council, recorded vote's been requested. Please indicate your agreement or opposition to the motion that's on the screen. Moved by council. If members wish, if you want to stand to be counted. All those in favor of the motion, as shown on the screen, moved by Councillor Singh, seconded by Councillor Pleshy, please stand to be counted. Showing in favor is Councillor Tour, Councillor Singh, Councillor Fortini, Councillor Power, Councillor Medeiros, Mayor Brown, Councillor Keenan, Councillor Pleshy, Councillor Brar, Councillor Basante, Councillor Santos. That motion carries unanimously 11-0.
Okay. This takes us to our next. Oh, Councillor Singh? Yes. So for the committees? Oh, happy to move this motion, seconded by Councillor Santos, that we remove the current provisions with respect to the position of having 2 deputy mayors and acting mayors, and we have 1 deputy mayor, and I move that that be Councillor Singh. Councillor Singh is someone that I have great confidence in, who I know will always fight for the best interest of the city, and I've seen firsthand how he can handle a very, very, very busy schedule of events. Anyone who can represent Wards 9 and 10 for 8 years knows how to manage a busy schedule, and I will certainly be leaning on Councillor Singh to help with city events across our great city, and to helping the city where there are multiple things happening at the same time, which happens quite often in Brampton. And so, Councillor Singh, you have been an exemplary leader for the city of Brampton, and it's with pride that I move this motion. Seconded by Councillor Santos. No speakers? Okay, all those in favor? Motion carries. Okay, our next motion is committee structure, membership, chair, vice chair appointments. This is moved by myself and Councillor Pleshy. Whereas Section 2.5 of the procedural bylaw sets out the requirements for the clerk to canvass members for the appointment preferences at the start of the council term as follows. Standing committees. Do you want to just put the whole motion on the screen?
So, Mr.
Whereas
Mayor,
Section 14 of the procedural bylaw 160-204 as amended allows council to temporarily suspend the rules of procedural bylaw by a 2/3 vote of council. Therefore, it be resolved that Section 2.5 standing committees and appointments be temporarily suspended in accordance to Section 14 of the procedural bylaw to permit the establishment and appointments of the standing committees and other committees.
So, Mr. Mayor, members of council, this is a temporary suspension of the procedure bylaw, so it requires a 2/3 vote of council.
All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Okay, this is a motion moved by Councillor Singh. If you'd like to speak to it.
Yeah, so this has, some councilors reach out to me, so this has some suggested chairs and vice chairs, and it's pretty much in front of us. We could check the committee of councils as well, roll down so people can see. And further down, and I do need a seconder. It'd be good if Mayor Brownie could, Councilor Pleshy. And yeah, it's in front of us. Yep, thank you.
Okay, second moved by Councillor Singh, second by Councillor Pleshy.
sorry, Councillor Fortini, through you, Mr. Mayor, you would like to scroll down? Okay.
Anyone had a chance to read them? Okay. Motion's on the floor, moved by Councillor Singh, seconded by Councillor Paleshi. Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, because this item 6.1 and 6.2 were brought forward, those two reports on item 6.1, that report also addressed the meeting schedule for 2023, as well as the additional regional councillors and the alternate member. So the additional regional councillors and the alternate member has been addressed by council, but there is some recommendations from staff regarding the 2023 meeting schedule. There are two options that were included in the report. Staff are recommending at this point, and it could be subject to change to council, is an option that has the meeting schedule of Committee of Council every 3 weeks and council every 3 weeks, with the third week being reserved for a council workshop on Wednesdays. If council wishes to go down that path, that could be done for either the entire year or the first half of the year, and council can adjust the schedule appropriately. Or the second option, which is in the report, is the more traditional meeting schedule, which has council and Committee of Council meeting every second week on Wednesdays.
Councillor Paleshi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I think we did have some difficulty with committees and council meetings the last few years, but I think those really related to probably COVID, the amount of work that was coming to committees, and then the amount of work that was being added at council meetings. So at a high level, I think that we need kind of a better grasp on the structures of committees and councils, but moving those to every 3 weeks, that makes me think that those agendas are just going to be massive. And I don't think that's something that I'm interested in. You know, I think that this council wants to get a lot of work done these next 4 years, and I think moving those to every 3 weeks is not that answer. So I'd like to see them kind of the way they are now, but I trust that not only the mayor and the chairs of each committee can really take a look at the committee schedules and adjust accordingly. That's my only comments. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So
I can move that.
and this is for 2023, not for 2022.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes. Yep. So through you, Mr. Mayor, then this motion would be moved by Councillor Paleshi if he wishes to move it with that amendment, or that the option 2 instead of option 1, which is the more traditional calendar. And it is attached, the report is in Appendix 1. Recommendation 3 in the staff report speaks to the 2023 council committee meetings being convened primarily in person, with in-person attendance for members and key staff, with some discretion for hybrid meetings, at the discretion of the clerk in consultation with the meeting chair and CAO, due to various issues that may arise. Because right now, as I pointed out to members of council-elect during the orientation, council's procedure bylaw currently enables hybrid meetings, in-person and electronic participation. at the pleasure of the participating member until March of 2023, after which council will have to turn its mind to how they wish to convene their meetings in person or through hybrid. So this is a staff recommendation that's suggesting that primarily meetings be revert back to in-person meetings unless there's extenuating circumstances, but again, that's just a recommendation for council's consideration.
Maybe we could look into council, send this to governance to look at, because I think in some of the committee meetings there was merit to having the ability where the traditional council being like today, you want everyone there, so maybe just to get some feedback from governance going forward. Could we have a motion to refer that to Governance and Operations Committee?
A hybrid model?
This, so what we do until March.
For hybrid?
Yeah.
So we'll just put that on the screen in a moment. And while that's being put on the screen, recommendation 4 that was in the staff report speaks to, there are 2 orientation workshops planned for council on November 21st and December 5th. The nature of those workshops deal with matters that the presenters, whether it's the Integrity Commissioner, some external experts that wish to present to council, to orient council to its responsibilities, maybe matters that can fall under the closed meeting provisions of the Municipal Act for education and training, so long as business of the municipality is not being advanced, which it wouldn't. It's a true education and learning and development opportunity for members of council. So that 4th recommendation is to authorize, if necessary, those 2 council workshops on the 21st and on December 5th to employ closed session provisions if it's necessary to do so. And it's on the screen there.
The closed session authorized required from the 21st of December. Okay, any issues with those 2 dates? We see none? Councilor Basante.
So we are referring this to governance then, is that correct?
The last one we sent to governance, this one is about 2 workshops. I assume primarily for new members of council that may want briefings on those 2 areas.
Okay, thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it is for new members, but it's also, it's beneficial for all members of council to participate in these workshops.
Is there a quorum requirement though?
There is not for a workshop, no.
Okay. So I need a member to move this?
I think we have Councillor Paleshi moving it, and I see Councillor Paleshi on the board.
Okay. Councilor Paleshi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just looking at those 2 dates, I know that I won't be available for either of those days, but that being said, I'm one of many. So if you wish to move it, go ahead. If not, that's okay.
Okay.
So, Mr. Mayor, so there is a motion at this point moved by Councillor Paleshi. It does require a seconder, so it'll have the first part, which is just receipt, second part, which is option 2 for the meeting schedule for 2023, part 3 now, which is the ability to have closed session for the 2 council workshops, and part 4, which is referring the potential for reintroducing in-person meetings for 2023 to the Governance Committee for further consideration.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Paleshi, seconded by Councillor Basante. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion carries.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, that concludes for item 6.1, I believe it was. 6.2, which was also brought forward. Much of that has been dealt with. It is on, on the committee structure. There is a registered delegation on that from Sylvia Roberts, so perhaps procedurally, I think I would suggest that either council can continue to finish this item, or council may wish to stand this item down to now proceed back to the statutory public notice item. We do have managed to get Mr. Palmer, I believe, on a telephone connection only, so we can proceed with that if that's the will of council.
So what would happen to the delegation? Just one delegation?
There's just one delegation, Sylvia Roberts, and that would stood down, and then we can come back to that after dealing with the statutory public notice item, because there are a few other recommendations in that report on the committee structure that have to be addressed on Sports Hall of Fame, Continuing Accessibility Advisory Committee, Brampton Board of Heritage Board, and also we do have to pass 2 bylaws in regards to the appointment of the 3 additional councillors to get that information over to the region for its inaugural tomorrow.
Okay, well then if the consultant's available, should we proceed with that? Okay. Okay, let's pull the consultant up then.
Okay. Hi, Ron. It's Peter Fay from the City Clerk's office. You're now in the special City Council meeting by telephone connection. So just bear with us a moment. I just want to make sure you can hear me.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you, Ron. We're just going to bring your presentation up on the screen right now. It's titled City of Brampton Parks Plan 2041. And then if you just want to say, advance to the next slide. I know you probably can't see in real time the slides that are on the screen, but we will advance the slides at your verbal cue.
Thank you very much. And it's great to be virtually almost in Brampton. So the Parks Plan 2041 is a collaborative effort from my team, as well as with multiple city staff members. My team, I'm Ron Palmer, and I'm a principal at Planning Partnership, and I was project manager. I worked with Enbury Lyon Company, who are financial experts, as well as Monteith Brown, planning consultants who carried out the City of Brampton's Parks and Recreation Master Plan a few years ago. They were very useful in giving us the context of some of the things that the city has done historically. Next slide. I'm sure everyone in attendance today is aware that Brampton is evolving, and Brampton is becoming much more urban. However, you will forever accommodate lower intensity forms of what we would typically call suburban forms of development, but that will also be augmented by a focus on substantially more dense, intense, and mixed-use parts of your city that will support in the long term an enhanced transit system. Next slide, please. To begin, and I'm hoping the slide says legislative overview on it, over time, the province has dramatically changed the legislation that affects how the City of Brampton achieves parkland through the development approval process. A couple of really important elements were Bill 73 back in 2016, and that required that the city carry out a plan like this in order to justify the use of what was then called the alternative parkland dedication rate. Then came Bill 197 in 2020, and that opened up the municipality's parkland dedication bylaw work to appeal at the OLT. And it also identified that you needed to prepare a new parkland dedication bylaw in the fall of this year in order to utilize an alternative parkland rate. As I'm sure you're also aware, the changes to planning legislation continue, and there are a number of adjustments that are on the table being considered as we speak. Next slide. We did do some consultation at the beginning of our work. We met with Build back in March of this year, and we talked about what we were proposing to do in the Parks Plan, and we also listened to some of the key issues that Build has with parkland dedication and its impact on the cost of development. We also carried out an online survey with residents of Brampton. That was done through March, beginning of March to the beginning of April. We did get 198 responses, which we thought was pretty good. And of course, the results of that survey are included in the Parks Plan. Next slide. I hope this says purpose on the top. So there's a number of purposes of the Parks Plan, which I'll go through very briefly. We wanted to talk about the types of parkland that the City of Brampton will provide. And that's a very important element of the plan. Not only are the types of parks important, but the amount of parkland is a crucial part of the work. And it's not just about the amount that can be generated on site in particular forms of development, but it's also the use of the cash in lieu or payment in lieu element and how the city may use those funds to acquire parklands throughout the city. The goal, overarching, really, is we want to ensure that the City of Brampton has and continues to provide a great parkland system that's diverse and beautiful. We also want to make sure that financial feasibility issues are considered when we talk about a fee or the dedication of land through the development approval process. Importantly, we need to recognize the difference between traditional Brampton and the urbanizing elements of the city in what we've called the intensification areas or the strategic growth areas. Overall, we need to make sure that your new parkland dedication bylaw is defensible. As I said before, for the first time, parkland dedication bylaws are subject to appeal at the OLT. Next slide, please. This says goals on the top. So 3 goals that helped us work our way through the process. We need to recognize and be responsive to the needs of the existing communities and the existing residents of Brampton and the future areas of growth. This plan is intended to provide direction to address long-term parkland needs with a certain level of flexibility in park design and use. We did include a whole host of recommendations that incorporate what we consider to be the best practices for parkland dedication, cash in lieu, and how that is utilized within the city. As I'm sure you're aware, every municipality in the Greater Golden Horseshoe is going through this exact process, and we've been involved in some of those for other municipalities and have certainly looked at what all the other municipalities have been doing with respect to this issue. Next slide, please. This should be a table with current parkland supply. At the beginning of the process, we wanted to understand where Brampton stands with your park system, which is a terrific park system, by the way, and you should be very proud of it. You have about 407 parks that accommodate about 1,175 hectares. Those hectares are fairly evenly distributed among 3 park types: neighborhood parks, community parks, citywide parks. When you look at how that compares to your population, you're achieving about 1.68 hectares per 1,000 people. That's a very important number because your Parks and Recreation Master Plan identified a need for the city overall to provide 1.6 hectares per 1,000 people. So you're just slightly ahead of what you have been told you are required to provide through that work that was, as I mentioned previously, done by Monteith Brown. The park system is not just the parks, however. You have a whole host of other open space properties, including your environmental elements and conservation authority lands, stormwater management ponds, however they can be used, They're not part of our analysis, but it is certainly a significant amount of land. And what you should be aware of is that Brampton is a relatively green place, and the goal is that we achieve over time and continue to achieve that 1.6 hectares per 1,000 people. That's a very important number. Next slide. This is a map of Brampton. The purpose of this map is to show that your park system is very nicely distributed throughout the city. You have different parks in different parts of the city, but overall there is very good coverage of park space, with most of your population within a relatively easy walking distance of a park piece. So it's a good news story. You're starting from a position of strength here. Next slide. The next few slides are all going to deal with the recommendations that are in the Parks Plan. I'm going to go through them relatively quickly. Notwithstanding there's 44 of them, I'm going to try and summarize them as best I can. Again, the recommendations really do focus on recognizing that there are different development contexts within Brampton, and those different contexts require different approaches to parkland dedication, as well as different types of parks and different design elements. Fundamentally, there's a difference, and we need to recognize the difference. Urban parks are different than a more traditional suburban greenfield park system. Urban parks tend to be more heavily used, are typically a more harder hardscape approach, and they tend to be smaller but more evenly distributed. That doesn't mean there aren't baseball diamonds and soccer fields in an urban context. It just means that there are additional elements of the hierarchy that need to be recognized and accommodated. Next slide, please. The recommendations in the report are augmented by a number of technical appendices that are part of the document. Appendix 1 talks about design guidelines, and it provides some good examples of what we mean when we talk about urban park typologies. There's a piece on research as to what some other, what I would call relatively well-liked downtown contexts look like with their park system, how much park is provided, what kind of parks, etc. And an important element is a discussion of different options for ownership within the city's parkland system. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later, but basically we're talking about fee simple parkland, which is more typical of what you've traditionally achieved in your parkland system, and also strata parkland, where the city gets ownership of the sliver of land where the park is located, but there can be parking garages or infrastructure underneath it. And then a privately owned public space, which is not owned by the municipality, but nonetheless is a piece of property, privately owned, designed to city standards, with accessibility guaranteed, that can form an important part of an urban park system. Next slide. As I mentioned, there are 44 recommendations overall, and that's quite a large number. And they're organized under 9 topic areas. And we begin with what are your objectives? And we heard through the survey work that, and particularly during the COVID-19 pandemic, that parks are really seen as an urban escape. And they were very heavily used during the pandemic when people were looking for places to get outside, to socialize in an outdoor setting, and to exercise. Parks are a really important component of a complete and livable community. It's something really important. I did provide some anecdotal information about how important parks are in the report. Parks are an investment stimulus. we found that developments that include parks or that are in proximity to parks are generally higher value and more marketable. And finally, we wanted to make sure, in terms of your objectives, that the principles that are inherent to the Parks Plan are equitable to the entire population, are consistently applied throughout the city, are transparent, so that everybody knows what the city intends to do. And of course, achieving that balance between achieving a great parkland system citywide and the important financial elements of the development community. Next slide, please. Number two, establishing an appropriate context-appropriate parkland hierarchy. I didn't focus on your traditional suburban communities. You already do a great job developing parkland systems for those types of communities. So the focus of this report was on what does an urban park system look like, and again, describing some of the differences and how they might be achieved in those different contexts, which gets to the next recommendation set as how do you achieve it? And again, it starts from the fundamental principle that the city needs to achieve your parkland target of 1.6 hectares per 1,000 people. Part of achieving that is how that parkland is distributed and how it is equitable and accessible to the population of the city of Brampton. Part of the conversation of a parkland dedication bylaw is how do you generate land and then how do you generate cash in lieu of land, which is fundamentally to be used for the acquisition of land. Each land use category has different approaches. Commercial and industrial uses have a mandated maximum in the Planning Act, as do all other non-residential land uses. Part of the work in this Parks Plan was to establish the parkland dedication requirement in both your designated greenfield residential neighborhoods and, of course, your mixed-use intensification areas and strategic growth areas. As I've been saying, those are two different approaches, and we have recommended different ways to achieve parkland dedication or cash in lieu, again, with the overall objective of achieving that 1.6 hectares per 1,000 people. As I mentioned, there is a part of the recommendations that talk about how to deal with fee simple parkland dedication, strata ownership, and POPs. They should all be part of an urban parkland system, but it's really, they have different values in the recommendations that need to be recognized based on some of the restrictions inherent to strata ownership and POPs. Next slide, please. And I'm hoping that we're on number 6 in terms of recommendations. Understanding how cash in lieu of parkland is going to be achieved and how it's going to be used is really an important part of a new parkland dedication bylaw. So we've provided some recommendations about who decides when cash in lieu is an acceptable approach rather than achieving land, or what the combination might be. How land value is established. When in the planning process is the land value established? A lot of this is already identified in the Planning Act, so this is a reiteration of existing rules and regulations. And then, of course, how the city will utilize the cash that is collected in lieu of land. The last 3 categories are also included in the recommendations. You have the opportunity to exempt or reduce parkland dedication for certain developers or development forms. For example, you may wish to exempt yourself from parkland dedication as a developer or the region or other government agencies. You may also wish to implement reduced standards for affordable housing or long-term care facilities or those kinds of things. It's important to understand what land counts towards parkland dedication, and equally important, what does not count. An easy example is simple property that is unconstrained is perfectly legitimate for fee simple parkland dedication. A piece of property that is contaminated would not be appropriate for parkland dedication. And then the final list of recommendations are related to the administration of the city's parkland dedication bylaw. Again, some of this is a bit legal, some of it's from the Planning Act, but nonetheless, it was important to put it all in one place so that you have a comprehensive set of recommendations that can lead to a number of implementation opportunities. Next slide. So this slide talks about what those implementation opportunities might be. First and foremost, the Parks Plan is intended to talk about a new parkland dedication bylaw that will identify how parkland or cash in lieu of land are achieved through the development approval process. There's also an opportunity for some of these recommendations to find their way into the official plan through an official plan amendment. And that's an important implementing tool. And then still some of the other recommendations may simply find themselves as part of a design and development guidelines that are referred to by city staff and by council when making decisions about parkland. Next slide, please. This one is the next steps. I believe council is being presented with a parkland dedication bylaw that implements some of the key recommendations of the Parks Plan 2041. I'm also understanding that an alternative parkland dedication bylaw has been created in the event that the new caps and other elements of parkland legislation changes in Bill 23 becomes in force before the final conclusion of the Parks Plan and the Parkland Dedication Bylaw. Certainly, Bill 23, which identifies about 8 changes to the Parkland Dedication approach, will have an impact on the Parkland Dedication Bylaw. At this time, however, we're not really anticipating that changes anything in the Parks Plan. It's simply a legislative requirement in the bylaw. We believe that the methodology and analysis included in the Parks Plan remains valid. We do recognize, though, that we may need to make some changes to the Parkland Dedication Bylaw and potentially the Parks Plan, but we'll need to be reactive to what eventually gets approved through Bill 23, and we remain ready to make those adjustments when necessary. And with that, I thank you for listening to me. I'm happy to try and answer any questions that you might have. And it's been a real pleasure working in Brampton. Thank you.
Okay, we have Councillor Santos on the board.
So much, and through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for the presentation. And I believe, is there a corresponding report with this as well? There is. Is now a good time to bring that report forward with the presentation so we could deal with both? Oh, we have a staff. Okay. So then maybe, okay. You brought up some really interesting points that I'm excited about, which is redefining what parks looks like and what it means, because we've seen in New York, Tokyo, Montreal, Toronto, this as people intensify, especially in Ward 1 in downtown Brampton, we're running out of space for green spaces, et cetera, but there is such thing as urban parks. And so I'm excited to see that and hoping that as we look at what parks look like moving forward, we redefine and include urban parks for sure. That being said, I'm going to start off right off the bat and advocate for the arts. And so how are we integrating in our plans, because I didn't see anything in the plans here, particularly arts into whether that's urban parks or even within our green parks as well. So that's one flag that I have there. I will always advocate for the arts in any sort of opportunity that I can. If someone could respond to that, because urban parks includes arts very much. The other question I have is in terms of engagement with residents. And so in the last term, as we were doing various park enhancements and projects, what we found was some residents were happy to see new parks put into place, were happy to see new playgrounds put into place, but they felt excluded from wanting certain things, like some parks and playgrounds are only good for young children, and there's no activities for the older kids. So engagement of residents as we move forward with a parks strategy and plan, I think will be super important. And so some comments on that. And then finally, the education piece. So with all the green spaces that we have and some of the green spaces that we have left, as the city grows and develops, it's also important, I think, to look at the opportunity to educate our residents through storytelling, et cetera, within our park system about climate change, the importance of maintaining our parks, issues with beavers, which will come up later. Sorry? And litter. Yeah, litter's a big one. So how are we going to integrate some of those things as we develop our park strategy?
Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, a list of really good questions, and my answer to all of them is yes, you should do that. This piece of work is fundamentally about setting the stage for how you're going to get new parkland and where you might acquire new parkland. It does provide an urban hierarchy, and absolutely when you look at the design guidelines for that are attached in the appendix, public art is part of that. Urban parks are excellent locations for public art. But this doesn't tell the municipality where parks should go specifically or how you want to interpret the design guidelines for each individual park. This is setting the framework for achieving different types of parks. There's lots of work to do at the municipal level about design, about interpretation and education. I think one of the really interesting ideas in the plan is and something that you already have, is your ecological park system components, and those are, as you mentioned, really important educational opportunities to learn about the environment. And finally, maintenance. The maintenance is a fundamental element of having a great park system. There's no point in having beautiful spaces that are full of garbage or that are falling apart. I did include some ideas about maintenance protocols and the requirement that in the future you should have a very clear understanding with your the parks people who look after the parks, recognizing the difference between an urban park and a suburban park. As I said, I think you guys do a great job on your existing park system. Urban parks cost about 10 times as much to build, and they also cost about 10 times as much to maintain, simply because of the level of use that they get. And it's really important to be ready for that as you proceed into the development of a robust urban park system that will not just be in the downtown, but also along your Queen Street corridor, at least in the initial stages, and then other places in the city as the city continues to grow. So consultation, I think, is more of a site-specific element, and absolutely that conversation should be had when you're building individual park spaces. And that's an ongoing thing because you're going to be building parks all the time. And you should be talking to the users of those parks to understand how it's going to be used, what are the best facilities, what's the best mix of facilities, and of course, what the park looks like and how it integrates within each community. So all excellent points. This is not the end of the game here. This is the very beginning. This is about how do you get park space. So thank you for the questions.
Marlon?
I think, so the Mayor, I just want to add one other comment to the consultation piece. Councillor Santos and I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago, and what Ron said is accurate. At the implementation stage for park enhancements, playground going in, shade structures, park building, we will have that through an SOP in our areas so the staff understands consultation is a key component.
Done, Councilor Sante? Okay, I see no other speakers.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, the next part of this item, statutory public notice item, is there's a presentation, item 4.2 from Claudia Larota from Planning, the Planning Department. That'll then be followed by one registered delegation, and then because this is a statutory public meeting, we'll ask if there's anybody in the audience that wishes to delegate, and then council can consider the delegations, the correspondence, and the staff reports regarding this item. So Claudia, we're just going to bring up your presentation momentarily.
Okay, thank you, Peter.
We're waiting for Claudia to speak first, or is there a person? Claudia?
Claudia, there's just a presentation we're just bringing up that was published with the agenda. Just bear with us a moment.
No problem.
Okay, you can proceed, Claudia.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Good afternoon, members of council and members of the public. My name is Claudia Larota, and I'm a principal planner with City Planning and Design. The planning department has been assisting parks maintenance with the preparation of an official plan amendment, so I will be doing this presentation on their behalf. As you just heard from Mr. Palmer, recent changes to the legislation require that the city update its policies with respect to parkland dedication. So this presentation is specifically related to proposed amendments to the parkland dedication section of the official plan, which are being presented today at this statutory public meeting for public review and comments. Next slide, please. The proposed amendment to the official plan does apply citywide, although there are different approaches depending on the context of where new development is proposed. And I will get into the details of that in the next slides. Next slide, please. So I won't get into all the details that Mr. Palmer just explained, but in order to understand why we're bringing an official plan amendment today, it is important to reiterate that changes brought forward through Bill 197 require municipalities to update their official plan policies if they wish to continue using what is known as the alternative rate for parkland dedication, or cash in lieu. And using this alternative rate is only permitted if the municipality has a parks plan in place, identifying its parkland needs, which Brampton just completed, and it's being presented today as well. Next slide, please. The parks plan identifies a series of recommendations. As Mr. Palmer mentioned, there's 44 recommendations, and some of them are to be implemented through a new parkland dedication bylaw and official plan policies. Specifically for the official plan, the amendments are to be implemented through proposed changes to the existing parkland dedication policies, which are already found in section 521 of the official plan. The proposed changes are only related to parkland conveyance or cash in lieu for residential uses. All existing policies in the official plan for non-residential uses remain the same. And it was mentioned in the previous presentation that different development contexts require different methods to calculate parkland requirements. And that, for example, suburban low-density areas need a different approach from the areas that are experiencing significant growth. So the policies have been drafted in a way that they make a distinction between residential uses for 3 separate categories. The first one being established neighborhoods and designated greenfield areas. The second one would be intensification and what we call strategic growth areas. And then the third one would be to recognize the potential to develop mixed-use developments. The policies have been drafted in a way that any potential changes that are being brought forward with Bill 23 are already recognized. So if the bill passes as drafted, there won't be a need to update the official plan. Next slide, please. The proposed official plan amendment is consistent with all applicable provincial legislation, as noted on the screen, and also with the region's and the city's official plan. Next slide. In terms of the process to date and the next steps, the notice of today's public meeting was posted on the city's website and on Brampton Guardian, both in the hard copy and online version of the newspaper. The parks plan and the proposed parkland bylaw were presented just a few minutes ago, and today we're presenting the official plan amendment at this statutory public meeting. The draft official plan amendment has also been circulated to external agencies for review and comments, and it is expected that the amendment will be brought forward for council adoption at its December 14 meeting, and that will be followed by an appeal period. Next slide. The report associated with this official plan amendment and this presentation have been posted online on the meeting and agendas page for today's council meeting. Any questions regarding this official plan amendment can be directed to the email address that you can see on the screen. And with that, I conclude the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm glad to see that this is finally being brought forward. I find that the devil's in the details, especially when the province is, this is something that, I've been talking about for 8 years, trying to find opportunities. But when the province does something, then I question why. So I don't fully understand why they're doing it. I know why they say they're doing it, but I don't understand the real reason behind doing it. The Parks Plan 2041, in finding the balance between achieving a great parkland. We already have a great parkland system. We just want the best parkland system. And I think we're the closest municipality to obtaining that in all of Canada. That being said, and I love the fact, I used to really like the fact that we had a ton of money in Parkland Reserve. But now I get the feeling and the sense that that money sitting there isn't being used and could be used to get that great parkland, to get the best parkland system. So, questions of clarification. My first question is, how much money currently do we have sitting in the parkland reserve?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd have to ask Nash to come online because he does have that number.
Okay.
Hi,
98 million.
through the chair. Hi, this is Nash speaking. We have around $100 million in the Parkland Reserve.
Yeah. So, and then this is now awarding us the opportunity to, and potentially the way I hear and the way I listen is, you know, we could look at communities in the city of Brampton that don't have, you know, maybe more established communities in the city of Brampton that don't have a park within that distance that we want them to have a park. We could potentially purchase land or purchase houses to create a park. Is that the way I'm kind of hearing some of this?
Yes, sir.
Privatizing parks is something that I would be interested in on the condition that that means that, you know, whoever owns that park doesn't get to just rezone it 20 years down the road. A parkland is a parkland is a parkland, but if it's their park, I like the opportunity where it's privatized, so, you know, privatization is usually, they do things a little bit better than, sometimes they do things a little bit better than public. So I'm interested in that. Go ahead, Paul.
So, and I agree with you. What we have to focus on is not only the purchase or the development of the parkland, but it's the maintenance of it. And it's maintenance to a standard. Because the city of Brampton has a standard, and it's an excellent standard in our parks.
Yep. And
we try to maintain that. We would have to make sure that we encumbered the developer, owner, builders with that same standard for as long as the perpetuity of that park.
And that's a huge piece of it because
Absolutely.
our standard's very high.
Absolutely.
And we need to make sure that the partner in this is, their standards are just as high. So if there's the balance that we can strike where, you know, they're owning a parkland, we're not having to maintain it, they're maintaining it, but then they don't have to put cash in lieu. You know, here's opportunities. There are other municipalities that are already doing that. Right, Jason? Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that's correct.
So I like this coming forward, but when it does come back from staff, please try and look into the details. Look how this can be. I want to know how this can negatively impact the residents by way of, you know, if this I don't like the appealability. I don't think that's appropriate, but I do want to know if a developer is now going to own a parkland in a new neighborhood, if they're just thinking that they're going to redevelop it in 20 years because, you know, we have a shortage of housing, well, you know, that's something that we definitely have to look at, right?
Yeah, correct. Through you, Mr. Chair. It's that development piece because that value of that property goes up exponentially, as we've even seen in the last few years, that a property that is probably deemed for something else has been flipped into residential or commercial properties. And we don't want to see that. We want to make sure that we have safe spaces in our community for people to go to enjoy and to participate in activities in. So it's the detail will be getting that finite piece of maintenance and perpetual ownership by the owners to make sure that it reflects the community. The other piece is the functionality of the park. We can beautify parks, but that doesn't mean they're functional. So we have to look at how we can make them more functional as opposed to aesthetically appealing. We still always want that aesthetic, but that functionality, sunshades, splash pads, walking paths, bike paths, lit, septed, you know, crime prevention through environmental design. We want to always continue to focus on that because that will give us more than a daytime activity area. We want to make sure it's used a longer period of time because our parks are really only while they're lit unless we light the parks. And then when they stay dormant until the next day. Well, that's not a great use. We want to make sure that we want to expand that use if we're going to do that. And we would have to put that on the owner's backs if we do public-private. So there's a lot more pieces. You're absolutely right. You're driving down the right road on this one. And we want to make sure that we have all the details.
Yep. So, and then the last comment I just make is, you know, I really want us to be able to anticipate, right? Bring to council what, you know, what are all the potentials? And I think that's when we make the best decisions, when we have that type of information. Going back to what Councillor Santos has been saying for the last 4 years, art. So, you know, where is this incorporation? And that's what we need to start thinking. I'm glad that it has that opportunity, but, you know, that's definitely something that we need to start thinking about.
So through you, Mr. I want to respond to something Councillor Santos said is the use of the parks. And that'll be the difficult piece for us is, I mean, there's two types of use. It's the age use from newborns right up to our seniors that are within our community, but it's also the type of activity within the park. People will want, some will want music, some will want art, visual art, some will want playgrounds. So it's trying to find that balance and doing it within a specific dollar frame as well. The economics of it will be a driver. So there's a lot more deep dive on this one than there appears.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Councillor Santos.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, and just building off Councillor Bleshey and what CEO Morrison had shared about art, it's also about how do we look at the parks and creating space for artists to perform. And so a good example is the TRCA JJJ project near St. John Bosco School, where they created an amphitheater at a very low cost, and instead of taking all of the dirt from the transformation of the JJJ project,
So,
they used, sorry.
If I could just remind members of council, or the clerk is giving me some procedural advice. This statutory public meeting is for the public. Questions from member of council should only be in regard to clarification.
Okay, thank you. Anyway, that was just an example of the way that we're creating space. So not just art in a very passive form, but in a way to encourage space for artists to perform. And it ended up saving a lot of money too. Okay, so my question is, in regards to clarification for parkland dedication, and in this particular presentation on green roof parkland. So I'm thinking of Ward 1, where we've got a lot of development projects that are happening, intensification projects. We have one development project where they are using geothermal, getting rid of the HVAC system on the roof, allowing more space on the roof, which is a large space, and somehow using these plans and strategies to encourage and incentivize developers to think in that way. I guess that's just a question. If that's been considered in this.
I'll take it. Through the mayor, and very good question. Yes, it's taken it into consideration. We're looking at strata parks and in terms of, and also in giving credits, if you're going to put a green roof onto a building, it's got to have public access. There are a lot of details to work out, but it's being considered as part of our new urban parks.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Just picking up on comments from CAO Morrison with respect to possibilities for restrooms in parks, et cetera. Would we be able to use DCs to build bathroom facilities in parks? Would that be something that could be done?
So I'm going to refer that one to our treasurer, Nash.
Okay.
Sorry, through the chair, it really depends on whether that's considered new work or not. If it is new work and new addition to city assets and so on, then it's possible to use the DCs. If not, then we cannot use them. So it will have to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, because, I know this is something that in every ward across the city, this topic comes up quite frequently, specifically not for younger people, but for our seniors who utilize the parks day to day and are always asking us to provide some kind of bathroom or restroom facility. And, there may be some innovative new solutions that we can look at, and there may be some information coming shortly for council to look at. But I think that that's something that we should keep on our radar on how we can design new parks that may include restroom facilities as a default, but also how to outfit existing parks so that they have restroom facilities, given on, maybe not the smaller parks, but the larger ones that are better utilized. And another question I have, when we're looking at the use of DCs and we build a bathroom facility in a given park, what happens in terms of operation and maintenance of a bathroom? How do we pay for that, and how do we assure that those facilities are open every day?
Through the mayor, that would be part of maintenance and operations. It would be in our operating budgets. We'd have to ensure that those washrooms are winterized and closed up in the winter, open up into the summer. Maintenance is done through operating dollars. That's the best way to do it. In terms of new parks coming on, we've noticed in the past while that shade in parks are becoming more and more important. So on the larger parks moving forward, instead of adding a shade structure, we're going to try to build a canopy and include a washroom facility attached to that canopy moving forward. So it's part of the discussion that's happening right now for larger parks moving forward, because smaller parks doesn't have the funding or the area to accommodate that, so it will be larger parks.
And so I think that we would all be very interested in seeing how we can have some more conversation around that, because for those of us who have had the opportunity to visit other cities, we know that restroom facilities are often integral to park land design. And, when we talk about adding a bathroom facility to a given park, there's always a question of, well, is there water access? Is there sewer access? Is there hydro? And all of these issues kind of crop up. And perhaps if we're designing parks, we should perhaps plan for that as a future expansion. So I think that for us, particularly here in Brampton, where our seniors heavily use our parks, we want to find a way to be able to provide that kind of service and that amenity and make it functional and also cost effective, because the maintenance piece is an important part of it. Thank you, Mayor.
So, Mr. Mayor, if I may respond through you, Mr. Mayor, I hear you quite clearly, Councillor. When we are starting to embark down a road where we're starting to go off the non-traditional way of designing things and putting equipment in, and I was talking to Ed, I mean, such things as we may not need those very permanent sunshades. We might be able to go to the canopy piece where we draw the drape over, much more economical. We have to look at different ways of putting facilities within parks.
Oh, that's better.
Councillor.
No, that's all right. I had a button on my headset. So yeah, I apologise. I've got a council meeting in the other side, which I may be called
Doug, it's Peter.
to answer
Your mic
questions.
is on.
I am watching. From my perspective, we really have sort.
Let's just mute it. There you go. All good. As you were.
Thank you. So as Councillor Santos knows, when we were at AMO, we had presentations by different organizations, including companies that were selling washroom facilities and setups, et cetera. So we'll be looking at those a little bit more. But what we have to do is we have to futurize a little bit better. What we expect people to do is not what's happening. People will go beyond those expectations, so we have to meet those. So yeah, we'll have to look at the facilities and we'll have to look at the infrastructure prior to it to design that and do what the government does is the future use examination really closely.
Yeah, thank you. I think that rough-in, if you will, would be important. Okay, thank you, Ms.
So, Mr. Mayor, just carrying on with this item, we are now at the point of delegations. We have one registered delegation, then we'll open the floor if anybody else wishes to speak. We have Ram Subramanian on behalf of the Sanath Maharaj Mandir to delegate to council on this item. Welcome, and you have up to 5 minutes to address council.
Before I begin, congrats to the newly elected council. My name is Ram, and I belong to a temple, a house of worship, and it is also a registered Canadian charity. We are currently located in Mississauga, but we are moving to Brampton. We have bought a unit in Ward 7, and we are going to be moving there shortly. Now, when we filed for a change of use and for building permit, the city is charging us in excess of $18,000 for cash in lieu for parkland. Now, thank you, Councillor Palishi. I just heard you mentioning that you should take into account the impact that this plan has on residents. We are not a profit-making enterprise. We are a house of worship. We are a registered Canadian charity, and we are funded by donations from hard-working, tax-paying Canadians like myself and yourself. So I'm here to make a sincere appeal and prayer to this esteemed council. Can you please consider an amendment to the parkland bylaw that exempts Canadian charities from cash in lieu for parkland? Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is the only registered delegation. I will now look to the audience. Is there anybody that wishes to come forward to delegate to council on this item? I do. Just one moment, Sylvia. So I believe, did I hear a member say they had a question of the last delegation?
Yeah, thank you. Just for clarification, so to staff, he was talking about change of use. So was that area not allowed to have a place of worship? Is that why he's being charged change of use?
Through the chair, Councillor, I'll have to get back to my staff and understand the details of that. If the gentleman would like to just connect with staff and bring up the case, we can look into the details of what has been charged there and why it was charged and so on.
But my understanding, sorry for clarification again, was there a place of worship there already before, or no? To staff, or the I guess delegation, I guess. Yeah.
It was an industrial unit, and it's already zoned M2109. We can use it as a house of worship also.
Okay.
From an industrial unit, we have filed for a change of use as a place of worship.
Okay. So I guess staff will have to work with them to see if it was that. Am I correct? Okay. Yeah, I got the notes. Okay, thank you.
So we do have a delegate. Please come forward and state your name for the record, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Hello, my name is Sylvia Roberts. I am a resident of Ward 3. I live right by Uptown, which Andrew McGill can correct me if I'm wrong, but is planned for approximately 80,000 additional people. And the housing target, which we'd planned for 2051, the province has recently effectively told us, okay, so we want that number, but 10% higher, and by 2031. So we need to figure out how we're going to add 80,000 people down there. For our parkland target, 1.6 hectares, we are talking over 100 hectares of parkland that are going to be needed for this. To my knowledge, there is exactly one site in the area that could meet that use, which is the Brampton Golf Course. There have been additional changes, which council staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but effectively, we're going to need to spend the DCs actually quite quickly after we get them. Was it 2 years? Something like, but it's a relatively short time frame. So we are going to need to figure out how to deal with the DCs we are currently sitting on for use. As we have a gigantic amount of development for this specific area, and there is only one parcel which can conceivably meet anywhere near the kind of use, it'd be good if council starts looking at it this term, so we don't run into the situation where we have the applicant come forward and want to change it from a golf course for residential, and then the expropriation costs go to the moon. Because if it's residential, if it gets valued at residential, there's no way the city can afford it. But if it currently is a golf course and is valued at that, then yes, the city can very much afford it. And additionally, will the rules on needing to spend the money quickly mean that if we deficit spend so the account goes negative, that when we get money into the account, we can use the DCs from that to pay it off, and that counts as spending it immediately, as within that allotted time frame?
Is there anybody else that wishes to come forward to delegate to council on this item? Seeing none, Mr. Mayor, I'll turn it back to you and to council to deliberate on this item. There is the correspondence as mentioned previously.
Okay. See no speakers, we have the motions. The report titled Proposed Amendment to Parkland Dedication Policy Official Plan to the Special Council meeting be received, and the draft official plan may be presented to the public consultation and comments. Moved by Councillor Keenan, seconded by Councillor Basante. Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. This takes the staff presentation, public information meeting, amendments to the Parkland Dedication section of the official plan. It's the presentation of public information, proposed amendments to the Parkland Dedication of the official plan. Moved by Councillor Power, seconded by Councillor Tour. Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. This takes us to...
The next item would be 5.2, the presentation from Ron Palmer.
Moved by Councillor Singh, second by Councillor Fertini. Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we can now go to 5.3, which is the correspondence.
Okay. A motion to receive the correspondence. Moved by Councillor Keenan, seconded by Councillor Santos. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
The next motion would be 5.4, receiving the delegation.
Okay.
From
Moved
Ram
by
and Sylvia.
Councillor Keenan, seconded by Councillor Tour. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries.
And finally, we'll just get the Councillor Singh and Councillor Tour. And finally, it would be, that carried, would be report 6.3.
Okay, moved by Councillor Tour, seconded by Councillor Power. Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That concludes council's consideration of this statutory public notice item. If council wishes to proceed back to the standing committee structure and governance, so there is a delegation requested by Sylvia Roberts, and then there are some additional recommendations that are in the staff report for council's consideration on the committee structure.
Okay. Do the delegation first? Yes. Okay, Sylvia, the mic is yours.
Hello, my name is Sylvia Roberts. I'm a resident of Ward 3. Last term of council, I served on the Transit Advisory Committee. As part of that, I went and at all hours of the day would actually be going and talking to customers of Brampton Transit. Sometimes it's meant 4 a.m., sometimes it's meant 1 a.m. While the committee itself doesn't seem particularly valuable because of its current meeting setup, there's actually a huge amount of transit the city is going to need because the city is being told you need to develop a gigantic amount of housing. Those people need some way to get around. So you decide if you want to spend a couple hours every other month talking about transit in order to get this done, or whether you want some other place to hash it out and come up with stuff that you can look at and evaluate it and simplify your workload. There has been a big issue, and that is the active transportation master plan is not properly accounted for, as it was done during last term after the committees had been formed. It was attached to the cycling committee, which made logical sense, as it was a standing committee. It was a committee that already existed and was largely within the mandate of it. There's one big issue with this. There is no representation of pedestrians. I actually tried to talk to the Cycling Advisory Committee because they're responsible for the active transportation master plan. And what I got was, this is the Cycling Committee, not pedestrians. And it's just not relevant. And so, as a cycling committee, that does make sense. It's not unreasonable for the cycling committee to say cycling's not our thing, but the problem is there is no committee or anyone really to address pedestrian issues to. So, I'm not saying there's one way to do it. You could change the cycling committee to an active transportation committee. You can create a different active transportation committee. You could attach it to the transit advisory committee, but this is something that actually needs to be addressed. As someone who relatively frequently took transit, pedestrians are very much a concern of Brampton Transit. For example, one night I was coming back from J. Red & Co., talking with friends, and so I'm walking home, and because the city's sidewalks were not taken care of, I had to walk in the street because I had spent a month trying to talk to the city about getting a 4-foot tall mound of snow. I have pictures if you want to see. Removed from the sidewalk and then turned to a block of ice. The city couldn't find it, so I had to walk around it because I can't really walk over a 4-foot mound of ice. And I got hit by a car, so now I live with chronic pain. And it is the case that the city's pedestrian infrastructure is constantly failing pedestrians, and when it is in this shape, it is not appropriate to have no one responsible for looking at this. So this is an issue that council needs to deal with. There's a variety of ways you may wish to deal with this, but it is something that actually needs to be dealt with. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, so we will then go back to
Councillor Santos.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Sylvia, for coming in today. I actually, and we're like looking at each other back and forth on this, I like the idea of an active transport, changing the name from Cycling Advisory Committee to Active Transportation Advisory Committee, and I would support that. I think maybe a few conversations with a few folks as well, but as we move towards a Vision Zero sort of priority with respect to moving people around, I think that's a really, really great point. And I know the cyclists in Brampton know those sidewalks pretty well as well. So thank you very much. I'm not sure, Mr. Clerk, if when an appropriate time would be to make that recommendation, but I don't think we're dealing with those advisory committees at this time today anyway.
through you, Mr. Mayor, so there is a staff recommendation to essentially pause consideration of those advisory committees until council determines its priorities and other things, which could include consideration of the proposal that was just placed. But we'll deal with that when we get to those recommendations. And it's up to council in terms of which decision they wish to make in terms of proceeding.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. And so I would move to refer the delegation over to that discussion then. Thank you.
Okay, moved by Councillor Santos, seconded by Councillor Fleshy. All those, Councillor Tor.
And echo Councillor Santos' comments. These are comments I've heard myself in the past few years. As someone who used to take bus to go to university, these are some of the issues that speak well. So thank you so much, Sylvia, for coming and talking about this. It is a very good suggestion, and I'm glad. I was just going to add what Councillor Santos added, is if we can defer this into that discussion. Thank you.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Santos, seconded by Councillor Tour. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, that refers the delegation, their request to staff. So that the next item to complete consideration of this matter is the remnants of staff report 6.2, which speak to the council committee structure. So the clerk's office has amended the staff recommendations to reflect decisions that have already been made earlier at this special council meeting. So in terms of what's remaining for council's consideration would be receiving that staff report 6.2, confirming the establishment of the adjudicative bodies, which are the Committee of Adjustment, Property Standards Committee, Brampton Appeal Tribunal, Committee of Revision, and the Brampton Election Compliance Audit Committee, which has already been established last term of council. Recommendation 3, which is saying that council consideration of reestablishing or establishing, for that matter, other advisory committees come back at a later point. So that referral that just occurred to staff, that can be incorporated into further analysis of which citizen advisory committees council wishes to proceed. Recommendation 4 is that staff report back on to develop any terms of reference for any other committees that council wishes to establish. And I do note on today's agenda, Mr. Mayor, there is an item, I believe, from yourself, 7.4, about establishing 2 possible citizen-based advisory committees on business ambassadors and equity, I believe it is. And then finally, recommendations 6, 7, and 8 speak to, 6 and 7 speak to continuing the Sports Hall of Fame Committee, because that committee is in full swing with considering nominations for the 2023 Sports Hall of Fame induction. So we'll let that committee run its course with its current membership. This is consistent with what happened at the start of the last term of council. And then for Brampton Heritage Board and Accessibility Advisory Committee, because those are essentially legislative committees, to allow those committees to continue with the current membership until successors are appointed, subject to council authorizing a citizen recruitment process in the future, which is recommendation number 8.
Okay, so for the Brampton Sports Hall of Fame Committee, there are 2 retired councillors who are no longer on it. So maybe we could, can we appoint today 2 councillor replacements?
Yes, if that's what council wishes to do, yes.
So if I could just add an amendment to that, are there any councillors that wish to serve on Sports Hall of Fame? Everyone hides. Who likes sports? Councillor Tour. One more.
Councillor Powers.
No? You love sports. Councillor Keenan? Sure. Okay, Councillor Keenan, Councillor Tour. Okay. And can we move up my item too? Would that make sense?
Mr. Mayor, 7.4, yes, if that's what you wish to do.
And I just want to say, for the Equity Committee, I was going to work with the Equity Office to get that in get a little more substance into that, so we can pull that. But I do want to add the Business Ambassadors Committee. Yeah. So you can pull that until we work on it with the Equity Committee. So we're not doing the equity one, just the business.
Oh, sorry. So through you, Mr. Mayor, so these would be establishing the in principle only, because they'd be subject to terms of reference that would have to be developed and brought back to council for approval.
Yeah, so we'll just do the business ambassadors until we can have a proper consultation on the equity one.
Okay, so we'll remove equity then.
And the terms of reference for that could come back at the same time as all the other committees?
They would, yes.
Okay, excellent. Okay. Anything else? No? So you need a motion to move all this?
Mr. Mayor, we'll need a mover and seconder. I do see Councillor Fortini on the board.
Okay, oh, Councillor Fortini.
Fifth. Okay. Can we scroll down where it says the accessibility? So you're saying that this stays for the 2023 year?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, what we're saying for this one and Sports Hall of Fame is allow those committees in their current membership that was appointed last term to continue because they're legislative committees until successors are appointed. And then with authorization appropriately in December or January from council, we will open a recruitment process for citizens to be appointed to these and other citizen-based advisory committees. And then the Citizen Appointments Committee will make recommendations to council for the new composition. But until then, allow these committees to continue with the current membership.
Yeah, but I'm talking about council, who sits on it.
So right now for the Accessibility Advisory Committee, you sit on that
Yep.
committee, and for the Brampton Heritage Board, I believe it's Councillor Vasante.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
when I put my name forward, it was for the term, not to carry on.
So through you, then, Mr. Mayor, if Councillor Fortini
So
does
I
not...
withdraw my name from there. That's
Okay, and is there a council to volunteer for the accessibility? It's a short period. We're probably looking at 2 or 3 months. Is that fair? 2 or 3 months?
Yes, and then council will make other decisions.
Okay, Councillor Vasante will step up. Thank you, Councillor Vasante.
So, Mr. Mayor, if there is no other...
No, Councillor Pelletier has a comment.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I just got a little bit confused there. We're at the clerk's office in consultation with the two committees have asked that the current sitting councilors stay on it for a couple more months until this council decides. And just to be clear, Councillor Fortini is not willing to sit on it for the remainder of the 2 or 3 months? Is that what I'm understanding?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Singh.
To the clerk, is this, I guess this is final, but if we want to rejig the number of people on the committee, is that a discussion we can have? Do we have to decide right now, or is that something we can do down the line?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that can be done down the line. 'Cause
Okay.
it happens every term on a regular basis, the composition
Yeah,
changes.
just some committees we might want to decrease the number, some we might want to increase, right?
That's correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay.
So, Mr. Mayor, if there are no other speakers, then we'll just need a mover and seconder, and these remaining motions as summarized and
Okay,
edited
moved
can be
by,
taken as a package.
Councillor Navjeet Kaur Brar, seconded by Councillor Tour. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
So, Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda would be, in agenda order would be 6.4, a staff report on the electronic monitoring policy.
I think there was going to be a motion to, Councillor Santos?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So in speaking with a couple of colleagues and also reviewing the report myself, I think I'll move to just refer this to committee to have a more broader discussion about the policy. I have some concerns about it, Big Brother concerns mostly. And so would like to have a more in-depth conversation about it, perhaps even a presentation of what that means.
Okay.
So motion to refer, seconded by Councillor Keenan.
Yes. Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Oh,
I just wanted to say to you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Mayor, we are under time constraints with that. It is legislation, so we are trying to conform to a period of time. I do have IT on the line if they could tell us the time constraint, or maybe Rick would know. But we're near the end of that. So if we could meet and sooner than later would be much appreciated.
okay, next item.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the next item is under other business, 7.1, a discussion item at the request of the mayor regarding an update on Bovaird House, Brampton Barn spending and reporting.
I believe we have a motion on the floor.
There is a motion here, yes. Require a mover and seconder. Oh, moved by Mayor Brown, seconded by Councillor Santos. Perhaps through you, Mr. Mayor, just a technical amendment to Clause 2, that it would be the Community Services section of Committee of Council.
Okay. Okay. Motion's on the floor. Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries.
This motion is carried. And then the next item on the agenda is 7.2, a discussion item at the request of the mayor regarding establishing a 2023 backyard rink competition. And there is a motion that has been provided by staff on behalf of the mayor's office, and it will require a mover and seconder.
Okay. Happy to move that. Councillor Keenan to second. And just to say, last year's backyard rink competition, we had sponsors that that donated more than the cost. So the city was actually in a profit situation. Thank you to those that sponsored the contest. And I thought it was a smashing success. We came up with the idea at the last minute during COVID, but this year hopefully got more time to promote it. And there are two major companies that have already reached out about sponsoring it to our sponsorship department. So I don't believe there'll be any cost for the city, but this gets the ball rolling. And it was a blast last year for any of the councillors that participated.
That's the mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Motion on the floor. Second by Councillor Keenan. Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion carries.
The next item on the agenda, 7.3, a discussion item at the request of the mayor regarding reauthorizing staff engagement in the university advocacy for the city.
We have a motion moved by Councillor Santos, seconded by myself. Just that the pens were previously down, but now if there is interest in a post-secondary campus, that those conversations can occur. And no cost to the city.
So to you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Mayor, we have continued to keep our line of communication open with all educational institutions, and we continue to have a good conversation with them. So this is very much supportive of what we're doing, and we'll continue to look towards bringing more education facilities and institutions to the city, and how we can best partner with those.
Okay. Moved by
It's Councillor Santos and seconded by the mayor.
Yeah. Motion on the floor. Anyone opposed?
Recorded vote has been requested on the motion on the screen regarding item 7.3. All those in favor, please stand to be counted. Showing in favor is Councillor Tour, Councillor Singh, Councillor Fortini, Councillor Power, Councillor Medeiros, Mayor Brown, Councillor Keenan, Councillor Brar, Councillor Visante, Councillor Santos, Councillor Paleshi is absent. The motion carries unanimously 10-0.
7.4 we already pulled up.
Yes, 7.4 has been dealt with. 7.5 is a discussion item at the request of Councillor Singh regarding reimbursement of external legal fees.
Okay, moved by Councillor Singh. I'm happy to second it. Councillor Mayor Brown. And I'm happy to speak to this, Councillor Singh, if that's appropriate. Just to say, you took the advice of our city solicitor and our city clerk and made sure that we adhered to the Municipal Act, and you certainly shouldn't be out of pocket for being loyal to your oath of office. Councillor Vicente.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I also want to speak in support of this reimbursement of legal fees that were incurred by Councillor Singh, recognizing that we were faced with a rather existential question here in Chambers, and having heard the advice from the city solicitor, advice from the city clerk's office, I think every member of council is very appreciative of the steps that Councillor Singh undertook to have that decision reviewed. And I think that this is absolutely worthy of being supported by the city of Brampton. And we avoided potentially a lot of headache for the municipality as a result of obtaining that decision. So I want to thank Councillor Singh for having taken those steps, and very happy to support this. Thank you.
Okay, motion's on the floor. Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries.
Next item is 7.6, a discussion item at the request of the mayor regarding city plans and options for staff return to in-person work.
So I believe there's some conversations consistent with the electronic monitoring policy that maybe we can park this for now and leave it with the CEO as that is looked at. So if I could
Move on, take no motion?
No motion.
Okay. Through you, Mr. Mayor. The next item is 7.7, a discussion item at the request of Councillor Santos regarding election campaign signs.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, it's
Sorry.
that time of year again.
Sorry, sorry to interrupt you,
Yeah.
Councillor. I just wanted to back up. So there was no motion on 7.6. Just curious if it was deferred to a future meeting. Are we bringing anything back? I just wanted clarity on that action.
No motion right now.
Thank you.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, it's that time of year again where candidates and who were not successful, those who were successful, have had and are expressing ongoing headaches with relation to campaign signs. I know that we changed our policy in terms of how we fine and get campaign signs dealt with and enforced. However, and I don't think we're going to make any decision today, but what I will say is that this election has proven yet again that campaign signs do not increase voter turnout. They don't necessarily help in terms of getting name recognition out there, but they have caused a lot of pain, stress, and a very exuberant cost to candidates, etc. So what I would like to do is to refer this to Committee of Council to include the previous report which was received, I don't know when it was, last year or the year before, for council consideration and also discussion. But CEO Morrison, I don't know if you have any comments about how bad the campaign sign situation was this year.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I can tell you this has been the absolutely worst year we have ever had for campaign signs. So rather than to sit here and go into it, I've brought JP Maurice in to give you a bit of an overview. We, last year, I can tell you, I took Councillor Vicente and Councillor Santos over to the hangar where we were putting signs, and we just didn't have enough room to be in that hangar for the signs to take a look. We filled and emptied and filled and emptied and filled and emptied the hangar this year. So, JP, if you come up and just give an overview, please.
So the Mayor, yes, it's been an exciting time for us, certainly as enforcement officers. I can tell you that during the election period, which was basically from September 26th to November 15th, we seized and removed 6,392 signs from various candidates. So that's basically each officer taking a sign, taking a photograph, and placing it into a hanger, or disposing it as per the process that we've outlined to all the candidates. We keep it for a week, and then we could just keep up with at a hanger. So we received during that period of time 278 service requests through the call center. So we had citizens were reporting illegal signs, so we would attend and investigate and remove the signs accordingly. So we're certainly looking at the overall picture of signs. This year alone, we've seized 33,000 illegal signs. So that includes, obviously, the junk signs and every signs that you can see on the streets. We're actively, every night, removing junk signs, including election signs. They're still out there, some of them. So it's an ongoing sort of process that we are involved deeply in it with our part-timers and full-time staff in responding to complaints. So that gives you a little bit of an idea. This is probably the highest number we've seen in terms of election signs that we see. So we're in that process now of invoicing those signs, those candidates that were the signs that were illegally placed. We're preparing the invoice based on photographs that we've taken, so we know for a fact that those signs were illegally placed. So we're going to be sending those invoices in the near future.
Thank you.
So one thing I'd like to add, two things I'd like to add through you, Mr. Chair, is JP alluded to the invoicing. We used to go through a court process, and we used to charge the candidates and go to the court, and we found that was really an insufficient process for us to follow. It really resulted in very low fines and really not much incentive for the candidate not to obey the rules. So JP came up with a very nice way of invoicing based on volume of signs, et cetera, return of signs. So that was one of the important things that we're going to move down. And it will be a sticker shock to some candidates coming back this year. And JP, can you just give me the number, like the dollar versus sign?
It's $25 per sign, so give or take it'll be $158,000 if we get every candidate gets their sign. Every sign is billed, but we know there's certain signs we didn't get a photograph, so we're not going to be invoicing those based on, we want clear evidence that the signs were illegally placed.
So if we look prior, we were getting $1,000 to $3,000 fines in courts for signs for the year, for a campaign right across the candidates. And as JP said, we might be in around $158,000 if we receive all invoiced numbers. So it should be an impact to the candidates or an incentive next time not to do this type of behavior. The other piece that we found interesting this year was the signs would go out and how many signs were being misappropriated or stolen by other people. So quite often candidates would come to us and say, our signs are gone. We document every sign seizure with a photograph, location, etc. And unbelievable amount of signs that were taken. So really goes to your point, Councillor Santos, is where is the value of the signs? So we'll be talking about that a little bit more down the road in the reports.
Thank you. So through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to refer this discussion item to the next committee of council. I know there's a report that's existing already that's ready to go that we can revisit, and happy to do that. And in follow-up to what you said about signs going missing, we have videos of people, young teenagers actually, taking signs, ripping them off, like vandalizing. It was really bad this year. And so I look forward to the discussion at Committee of Council, and I'm sure many of my colleagues here are looking forward to that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, and next is Councilor Fortini.
Yeah, thank you. To JP, you said there's 6,300 signs. It's about 158,000 if we pay the invoice. They have to pay, right? one way or another, because it becomes a par 3 and it goes after their license.
Well, through the mayor, it's an invoice that we send to each candidate that had the illegal sign, so it's an invoice that must be paid.
Yeah, sooner or later they have to pay. The other question is, do they, I remember last time we got the signs, I think they were already published, because I see a lot of signs still out there. If you drive around, there's lots around. Do they actually go by, does it go on a website? We did that, I remember in 2014, I think it was showing, I received, I remember, 7 tickets. And you always get those tickets, kids move them around, people kind of grasp. It's when you get lots of one candidate putting hundreds and hundreds, that's intentionally compared to 8, 9, 10 tickets. Or they just get the invoice.
You're talking about the names being published?
Yeah, because we were served. We were served our home, and we had to go to court. The names were there, and they went on the website, all the candidate and the tickets.
So through you, Mr. Chair,
Now
there's nothing we're hitting. Yeah, I see exactly what you're saying.
Sorry,
It's not
did you put a referral on? Yeah,
Okay,
so can we
alright.
keep the discussion to the referral?
Oh, yeah, I'm asking, okay, so, what you were saying?
We can do.
We can have a robust conversation.
We can do that.
Okay.
The other thing I wanted to mention was the process we used for this one. We trialed it with the provincial election and the previous provincial election to see if it would work, and it did work for us in the sense that our seizures and fines exceeded what we would have done normally and naturally through the court process.
Yeah.
So it was a positive process for us. So that's why we employed it here. But we'll go back to the referral and talk to committee.
Yeah, and talking to the referral, I remember last time they give you the $40 ticket, and usually they bring it down to 25 plus court costs, 20 plus court costs. So really, there's no more courts, so you just get the ticket, and that's
Just
it's
an
a lot
invoice.
easier, a lot simpler. Good, thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Thur, we're speaking to the referral.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you, Councillor Santos, for bringing this up for discussion. All of us just recently ran election campaigns, and especially for someone running a campaign for the first time, it is a significant barrier for a candidate to sign up, not just in terms of the cost for the sign itself, for them to purchase the sign and the material to go with it, but the hours that you spend using your volunteers to go out, put up these signs, and it also causes a lot of tension between different camps. And the civil part of election campaigns are sometimes lost in signs, whether it's vandalism, whether it's fighting for the limited real estate that you have to put up your election signs. So I'm happy that you're bringing this up for discussion, and would be happy to discuss further on this, but I think this is a really good step forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tour. So there's no more speakers. We have the motion on the floor from Councillor Santos, seconded by Councillor Tour. Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the next item is 7.8, a discussion item at the request of Councillor Santos regarding property standards enforcement.
Thank you so much. And through you, Mr. Mayor, one of the very common themes in this election was property standards related especially to private property and residential housing, whether that's long grass, snow not being plowed on driveways or shoveled on sidewalks, or garbage and not taking care of garbage. It was at every single door that we went to in wards 1 and 5 as a growing concern. And I am going to refer this to Committee of Council, not next week, but the week after, or the next Committee of Council after that, Peter, would be December 7th. So Committee of Council, December 7th, we can have a more thorough conversation about this, but I did want to bring it up because residents want us to talk about it right away so that they know that they have been heard. And just a quick question to staff, for clarification, especially for the new councillors here, if there is a property standards issue related to a property, it is complaints-based, correct? Okay.
Correct.
So it's not proactive.
We do, so you, Mr. Chair, we do some proactive, and that's where it's typically we'll go to a complaint and we just don't go with blinders on to that one complaint house. if there's a house down, next to it, or there's an infraction very close, we also look at that as well. I mean, we'd be remiss if we didn't do that. So we look at that, and that becomes a proactive complaint for us. And then on occasion, our officers will drive around, and they'll see something so egregious they have to deal with it. That would be another proactive. So I wouldn't say we're strictly complaint-based, reactive. We do proactive work.
Okay, thank you. And just to give you a sneak peek to provide a little bit of direction in terms of some questions or suggestions and ideas moving into the next committee of council is looking at a pilot or an opportunity to do something a little bit more proactive, perhaps like a blitz. So for 2, 3, 4 days, just blitzing and focusing on property standards, and doing it seasonally, depending on what time of the season is, and where we see trends of people really dropping the ball.
Through you, Mr. Chair, absolutely. I agree with Blitz. We've talked about Blitz. We've done blitzes in some sense, some ways as well. One of the negative reactions we get from Blitz is all of a sudden we're targeting. So you win and you lose with some people. But we do spring blitzes, we do fall blitzes, we do other type of activity-centered blitzes. But we'll continue to do that. We'll look at other opportunities and see if we can enhance that program.
Great. So we have been talking about and thinking of possible regular blitzes, as well as looking at possibly increasing fines on certain things. Those are two things that we've been talking about, and if there are other ideas on how to deal with this, that would be great, and I would suggest perhaps piloting it in certain areas where we know there is a common trend of complaints in certain neighborhoods or on certain streets.
If I could just add to that, JP and I were chatting about this earlier today because we knew this was on the agenda. And we were talking, literally used the word blitzes in our conversation. And one of the things we would like to do is go back and look at what are our most frequent complaints. And we do know that refuse, long grass, and property standards. But within property standards, what are the specific complaints within property standards? And then, I think the people who are probably some of the excellent sources of information about what to blitz and where to blitz are the councillors themselves who hear the complaints. So we need to find a way to engage with you specifically, the councillors, to figure out how best we can use our resources.
Okay, awesome. So referral back then to December the 7th, and look forward to more wholesome discussion on that, and any information you could provide at that committee of council would be great. Thank you.
Seconded by Councillor Keenan. Councillor Fratini?
Yeah, thank you. Just quickly, when we bring this report, how do we treat these homes where we have to go multiple times and file, you go and then you issue an order to comply, and then it gets cleaned, and then the file starts all over. Do we have any tool, like once we go once, twice, 3 times, 10 times to the same home? Because they kind of learned the system with this property standard. And I know we've dealt with one of them like 30 times the same home, and it's over. It's a waste of taxpayers' money, bylaw, hard work, and residents are complaining to us that we're not doing our job.
So through you, Mr. Chair, I'll answer that, Councillor Pertini, is our process is to go through the courts, and that's really the biggest avenue we have. And I agree with you. We've been to many properties that have multiple infractions, and our frustration is that we just have to keep laying the informations, the paper, doing the charges, and then we're dependent upon the court for the penalty and for looking at the severity of the offense in numbers. Like lots of times we'll bring 5 or 6 and they'll just deal down to 1. That's sort of beyond our control. We can advocate, the city can be an advocate for possibly a better court process, but we are behind that. That's where our stop is.
Okay, so when we don't clean this, we changed the bylaw, I remember last term. When someone doesn't clean their snow, we actually add the bill to their property tax.
Correct.
Why can't we do that in front of someone's home like the home we're dealing with? It's 50 times. We've been going back and forth and neighbors complaining. Why can't we go there and clean and just add the bill there?
I'll let Diane explain, but it does come under a different process.
So,
Diane?
through the mayor to Councilor Martinez. What Paul described, the POA process, that is one of the avenues that we have. We did recently implement another avenue that we're hoping is actually going to have a better impact on these recurring events where we have to go back over and over again. So the original process, as Paul described, is the POA process, which required our officers to go out and do a full investigation, go back to their desks, prepare informations, go and swear them, take them to court, have them filed, and then go through a very lengthy court process. Unless the type of offense was one in which we could go in and do the cleanup or the repairs and then charge it back to, which sometimes we do, depending on the nature of the offense. But in August, you may recall that we passed a new property standards bylaw. And we also added property standards offenses to our administrative monetary penalties program. This makes it a lot easier for our property standards officers to go out and lay charges, it's not charges anymore, it's called penalty notices. And so they can do that very efficiently and very quickly. So that was just implemented in August, and it's now actually within our system. We can actually go out and issue those penalty notices. So we're hoping that what we're going to see is we're going to see an increase in our ability to go out and address complaints. And we're hoping that it's actually going to also lead to more compliance, because they actually are going to receive those tickets, and those tickets will apply to their home more quickly without going through a very lengthy court process that may at times not result in the kinds of fines we want to have imposed. So we may need to wait a little bit of time for that new process to kind of take some effect, but there are a couple of avenues. And if we have repeat offenders where we've issued numerous penalty notices and it's not making a change, then we can still rely upon the POA system to bring more severe charges against them in the POA context.
Yeah, and thank you. And what I was trying to say, I understand, someone gets a notice and you got so many days to clean it. Because the problem is, a lot of homes like we deal with, they actually clean it, the file's closed, and a month later it starts again, and it gets closed, and it's the same people. Those are the ones where we should not issue this after 10 times when there's no more noise. We just clean it up and bang. You've been warned 50 times, whatever, it's too much work for us to go back and forth. And the residents are right. They're complaining that we as councilors don't care, because we get the complaints. We send it to staff, they do their job, but that's the system. Good, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fortini. The motion is on the floor. Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries.
The next item is 7.9, discussion item at the request of Councillor Santos regarding residential landlord licensing and code of conduct.
Councillor Santos?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, another hot topic that also follows up with the property standards issue. And over the past few weeks, I've been looking at this idea that Councillor Vicente and myself have been talking about. I know City of London has done landlord licensing, as well as others. I'm sure it was a discussion here at the Brampton table, and we've chosen registration instead for probably various other reasons. But we're interested in taking a look at it again, as there is more pressure to create secondary units, and there is a housing crisis in the city of Brampton. I don't know what the context was when we discussed it last time, but the housing crisis, property standards issues are really putting pressure on us to be a little bit more strict when it comes to our landlords and the way that they maintain their properties. So if we could take a look at that and bring it back on December 7th as well as one package to look at together, that would be great. And, oh geez, what was I? The code of conduct piece. So code of conduct for the landlord, looking at municipalities and whether or not a code of conduct for a landlord, in addition to the licensing option. But also what I found in some research over the past few weeks are code of conducts for tenants, and requiring landlords to get tenants and renters to sign a code of conduct that perhaps the city can provide a recommendation on.
So through you, Mr. Chair, you're quite right that we should be looking at all those, and I can go a little bit further talking about code of conduct. I'm aware that some universities have code of conducts with their students, even though they live off campus. So where there's complaints off campus and it's reported to the university takes action that they can take that's different than the action we can take. So we'll start examining that. Rick, do you want to speak to this at all?
Thanks, Paul, and through you, Mr. Mayor. I just actually was thinking maybe this will come back in the report, but this may be outside of our sphere of jurisdiction. I don't know that we can impose that kind of thing on a landlord, and it may come back to how we license the rental units, but I don't know that we can license the landlords. But anyway, so I was just kind of putting it out there, but maybe Diana wants to elaborate on that.
Through the mayor to Councillor Santos, we'll bring back a full report and we'll detail everything that you've asked for. But you are correct, there are municipalities that do license that. And Mississauga has a licensing program for residential units. I think under 4 units for a property, they do license that. City of Hamilton is another example where they have a pilot program, 2-year pilot program that they implemented last year for residential units. And the idea is to ensure the safety that they are reviewed for compliance with building code and fire and ensure the safety of residents. So we can bring a full report and review, do a jurisdictional scan, and we will, of course, review the limits to which we can we obviously can't impede upon provincial jurisdiction, but there may be ways in which we can assist through licensing.
Okay, great. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Basante.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Santos, for bringing this forward. Without question, one of the top issues in the campaign was concerns from residents around the behavior, the property maintenance of rental units, housing, housing for students, etc. And it causes a lot of grief for the neighbors when they see a home that is not maintained, 9, 10 cars parked on the driveway, garbage discarded at the side of the house and not collected. Just the problems are so numerous, and residents are at their wits' end and coming to us and looking to us for solutions. Fundamentally, it's been our opinion that if a landlord wishes to put multiple rooms or multiple units with multiple rooms in each unit in a home, they have that right and they can operate that as a business. So as a business, they properly should be licensed by the municipality. And that code of conduct is so important so that when they undertake a responsibility to have a business of that nature in a home, that it's very clear as to what the expectations of the municipality are, and they're signing and agreeing in advance that they are going to be doing a number of things properly to ensure that the property is well maintained and that there's no loss of the cohesion, the beauty of the neighborhood as a result of things being missed or not taken care of. One very interesting conversation that we had with one landlord together with residents was the landlord says, well, I ask my tenants to do things, but sometimes they don't do it. What do you want me to do? And our reply to them was, well, I have to mow my lawn, and if I delegate that responsibility to my kids and they don't do it because they'd rather, do something else, well, then it's my job to mow the lawn. And so you can't delegate that responsibility to tenants, and then when the tenants don't follow through, you put your arms up and say, well, what do you want me to do? No, it's your job to maintain the property, not theirs. And so, and further, I would just say, and this has to come back, the fines need to be such that, and Councillor Fertini mentioned this, and I think this is important, as staff are required to go back repeatedly to lay the same type of fine on a particular property, the fine should be increasing at an exponential rate so that they feel the responsibility and bear the weight of the pain that the residents are feeling in that area. And you're right, CAO Morrison, in a lot of university towns in Ontario, my daughter attends at Queen's, there is a code of conduct, not just for the landlord, but also for the students, so that, the municipality is as orderly as possible. And so I think that we need to focus a lot of energy on this because it's what the residents are asking us to do. So I look forward to that discussion. Those are just some of my thoughts and our thinking on what it is that we should be looking at. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Palucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I think we have to kind of tackle this with a little bit of caution. Like the Sheridan College accusations that were happening, we don't want this to negatively impact any students living in the house. I currently have 2 houses on my street that have some students living in the houses, and the neighbors and I felt that, you know, they needed a good stern talking to. So we called them out one day. We had a little chat about their property, and really they just didn't know. They didn't know, you know, they're given very little information, these particular 2 houses. And I can say now they're probably the best neighbors on the street for maintaining their property and you know, going outside and making sure that everybody else is okay. So you know, I know we have landlords that may not be providing their tenants with all of the information, and I think that's a big piece of it, that we need to be able to ensure that they do that. Like Councillor Vincente, I believe, said about this is a business and they're running a business. Well, there's always opportunities for you to contact the owner of the business or the manager of the business. In this circumstance, there isn't. So maybe the opportunity is a posting of something outside of the house to say, this is the landlord, this is his contact information. And if neighbors want to give that person a call, then, you know, at that time, maybe they can do that. If you're a good landlord, you don't have to worry about anything like that. Because I also have another house off of my street that provides their own, you know, the landlord provides their own grass cutting service. There's grass cutting maintenance that comes in once, sometimes twice a week, and maintains that particular property. So there's definitely a balance. We don't want to put any negativity towards students living in a house or students fighting in a commercial plaza, right?
Through you, Mr. Chair, you're right, Councillor. And a couple of comments is one: not every neighborhood has people such as yourself and your neighbors that'll go down and do that. There's a lot of expectation that that's a city responsibility, so they take the city with the 311 call and to perform that responsibility. And duly so, we perform that. The second piece of that is, it's interesting, is a lot of these properties, we have to remember, when people buy property in the city of Brampton, homeowners, they're here for a long time. So when we impart the rules and the understandings and the norms, the community norms to them, they pretty much abide by them. A lot of the properties that we deal with as secondary units are rotational occupants. So we'll get a group of people one year, and then the next year it's a different group of people. So it's hard to keep up with that education piece. That's a very demanding part of it. So it really does, as you say, fall back on the homeowners. And how do we make them responsible? Because it's their property, their long-term property within the city of Brampton. So we will go back and we'll start focusing on that. But it shouldn't be shouldered entirely by the occupants. It should be certainly the owner. Quite agree.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor, no? Yeah, I'm off. Okay, motion's on the floor. Moved by Councillor Santos, seconded by Councillor Desante. Staff be requested to report the matter to the December 7th, 2022 meeting of Committee of Council. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries. Discussion on the request to Councillor Santos, stormwater management ponds and beaver concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Another hot topic in our area, what we have found with respect to beavers is we're starting to get a beaver issue and concern. Some of the beavers from the watershed in Caledon are having lots of babies, Those babies are going downstream to other stormwater management ponds in Brampton, causing dams. And what was once the intention of a stormwater management pond is now being hindered in its effectiveness because of this beaver concern. And so Councillor Vicente and I have had a number of different meetings with residents throughout the past few months now, who, in different locations, different neighborhoods, different stormwater management ponds, who have expressed concerns about beavers. And we've had conversations with city staff from Animal Services, Public Works, et cetera, about this issue. And so again, I'm going to refer this, but I just wanted to bring it up to let the residents know that it is on our radar and that we will be dealing with it in due course. But I would like to refer this, if we can, to, again, December the 7th, in order to have a more wholesome discussion on it and what possible solutions are. In the meetings that we had with residents and with city staff, there were some opportunities that were discussed. But I know in Northern Ontario, the province does have legislation related to beaver control. We don't have that in urban settings, but perhaps that might be something that we consider advocating for. So I'm not going to say anything further other than to refer this discussion to December 7th as a little preview to what we need to deal with. And I'm not sure if Councillor Vicente, you have anything further to add? Nothing? Okay, thank you. So that's just a referral and seconded by Councillor Vicente. If staff want to comment, you're welcome to, but we can wait till December 7th.
Okay, motion moved by Councillor Santos, seconded by Councillor Vicente. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries. Next item, discussion item, request of Councillor Santos, vehicular speeding on local roads and a 30-kilometer speed limit.
This is going to be thank you for you, Mr. Mayor. This is going to be a fast one. Another big topic, as we all know, speeding in our local neighborhoods and roads. And before this term of in our last meeting of our last term of council, we did pass a motion to look at reducing local speed limits on local residential roads to 30 kilometers an hour. So just a quick question, any idea when that report might be coming back?
Through the mayor to Councillor Santos, we do have Kevin Minnick, Manager Traffic Operations and Parking. He can speak on this.
Okay. So that will be when, sorry?
Oh. Hi, it's Kevin Minnick, through the chair to Councillor Santos. We are working on a report. There is a lot of information we do need to collect from other municipalities, and there was also a request for a cost breakdown of signs and whatnot. So I would suspect we are looking into the new year before we can provide a comprehensive report back to council on this.
Okay, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. So Kevin, you said in the new year?
Yes, I've been looking probably January, February, if that's possible.
Okay. Okay, great.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. We have a few motions. Okay. Councillor Fertini.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, this is a concern around the speeders. You talked about speed bumps. I heard something about speed bumps. They're coming forward with that report or something?
Kevin can speak on that as well.
Through the chair to Councillor Fortini, the question was about potentially reducing speed limits on local roads.
Okay, sorry. So, I know this is a hot topic all across Brampton and the speeding, bringing it to 30, but, we got speeding 30, 40, or 40 or 50. People still don't obey signs, so I was just hoping when we could get I heard the speed bumps, and I know Mayor Brown, myself, Rod Power, there was a big accident in our area over some speed bumps, so I'll wait for that to come back and maybe we'll have it. Thank you.
Okay. With the motion on the floor, moved by...
Sorry, there is no motion.
Oh, not referring this to... Okay. 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 Next item.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The next item is 7.12, a staff update regarding the commenting timelines for Bill 23, the More Homes Built Faster Act. Staff just wish to provide an update to council on that matter.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Andrew McNeil, Acting Director of City Planning and Design. As you may be aware, on October 25th of this year, the province unveiled the More Homes Built Built Quicker Act, also known as Bill 23. This is a significant piece of legislation that will impact not only the city of Brampton, but most municipalities across the province. There was further announcements this afternoon at 1 p.m. In addition to Bill 23. We are currently in the process, my team is leading a cross-departmental review of all of the legislation. There are 19 postings on the environmental registry. I've never seen that much legislation come through in my career. So we are currently reviewing all of the implications of this on the city of Brampton in collaboration with all of our colleagues at the city of Mississauga, Peel Region, town of Caledon. We intend to be in a position of having a draft comment letter prepared by end of this week or Monday. What this motion is intended to do, we just don't have the time to get this in front of council. There's no council meeting scheduled in advance of November 24th, where the majority of the comments are due for these 19 postings. So we're seeking direction from council to provide us with the ability to submit comments to the registry on November 24th, subject to us coming to November 23rd Committee of Council to share with you all of the comments that we are intending to submit this evening. So you have an opportunity to see them all, and we can walk you through them and answer any questions that you may have. So the intention today was not to get into any detail, but just simply seek direction so that we could proceed to committee on the 23rd.
Any questions, Councillor Pelletier?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what comments are we planning on submitting? Like, nobody prepared them yet?
We're in the process of doing that.
And you can't get them to council prior to the submission date?
There's no scheduled council meeting. That's the issue. Yeah, so we're trying to bring them to November 23rd Committee of Council.
Okay.
Yeah, and just so you're aware, virtually every municipality in the province is in the same situation.
100%, Andrew, but we're not in other municipalities. So let's try and work through the municipality that we have here.
Correct.
When can we get the comments in front of council? When do the submissions have to be?
Submissions are due November 24th. We are currently pulling all of the feedback from all of the departments together. We hope to have the draft ready by Friday so that we can circulate it to council in advance of the meeting. So that's the target we're shooting for.
So you're shooting for this Friday?
Correct.
And then can members of council start submitting any issues with any of those comments as soon as they get the draft?
Absolutely, yes.
And then council won't be able to provide any direction, but that being said, hopefully we have a robust conversation on the 23rd, right? The 23rd.
Yes.
And then we can, prior to the submission date, reflect that discussion from committee?
Correct.
Is that what everybody's willing to do? Okay.
Yes.
The More Homes Build Faster Act, that's encompassing the Greenbelt proposal as well?
That's one component of it, yes.
Okay. And I'll only provide this comment, as I'm sure there are no members that really want anything to do with touching the Greenbelt. We have the Near and Carry mission that is covered within the Greenbelt, but they have grandfathered zoning, institutional zoning. And in talking to them and them looking at providing wanting to have a long-term care facility on their property, I see the two kind of conflicting a little bit. So with this, I was kind of thinking, well, maybe here's the opportunity to make it as simplistic as possible.
Okay.
If we can just keep that in mind and kind of look at that, because what I don't want is them to be coming forward to do something good, and then the Greenbelt, which they have the zoning already in place, so them being able to provide that, but then the Greenbelt coming into effect. So if I can just have you take that back and we can look at that, because if it comes down to it and we have to make that part of the comments or request, then we can do that at the time.
Okay.
And
sorry, Jason.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Hey, Councillor Pelletier, if it's helpful, right after the meeting on the 23rd, we could have a special council meeting to ratify this, so the submission can be made on the 24th, that's helpful.
I think I'm hearing from staff that they're ready to take whatever committee of council says to make any adjustments. But Mayor Jason?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, thank you for the opportunity to provide you with our thoughts here. There's a couple of things here at play. One is that the submission of staff on the technical side in terms of providing response through the ERO, there's nothing preventing council from taking action and providing any of your opinion public to the province. So this is always available to you as a tool. What Andrew is talking about here is that just like other staff in other municipalities, in terms of providing through the ERO our technical answer to those proposed changes, the provincial staff, they look at that, they take things into consideration. Similar to us, they go to their obviously politicians, and then the politicians consider all those comments. They take what they want or they wish, and then they come up with the outcome. So we have a deadline we want to meet, but there's nothing preventing council also from making either statements or a letter. My understanding, some other municipalities, I know in particular, I believe at Simcoe, so that there may be a joint letter coming from the lower tier, and the upper tier is in one response, but that's on top and above of staff response to the ERO.
Mm-hmm. No, and I appreciate that, Jason. I think when, talking about the technical aspect of it, I don't believe that you're going to have many councillors providing any comments. We certainly have the capability within planning to comment on the technical side of it. We certainly have the best, I think, here in the city of Brampton. It's just kind of the, what else does it mean? What else does it, maybe there's opportunities where, we just knock doors for a long time, and hearing what some of the residents might be saying might be worth to have that conversation to provide those additional comments when we do submit the overall comments. But I thank you. I know that we can always have that submission as councillors to the public, but I think as the city of Brampton, the corporation, we're one of the fastest. We've been the fastest for a very, very long time. If they don't listen to us, because they don't know what they're doing. We know what we're doing, right? So I know they're trying to implement, and they're overarching, trying to do something good, but our staff know what to do better than they know what to do.
Thank you, Councillor. One more aspect as well, just the B part, is that the window of opportunity for consultation, there is actually two deadlines. This is a deadline, and then there is another one in December, but that doesn't mean that same applies to you. That's for the application of what they wanted to have input on at which items by which date. So there are 2 days. There is one in December as well.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you.
No.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Pelletier. We have the motion on the floor. Let's see, do we need to receive the delegation?
No, it's just advisory from staff. We do need a mover and seconder.
Yes, okay. Moved by Councillor Pelletier, seconded by Councillor Power. Everyone in support? All in support? Anyone opposed? None? Motion carries. Okay. We've already dealt with the deputy mayor position.
That concludes all the other business items. We're now at item 8, which is public question period. If there's anybody present, there's a 15-minute limit for question period on decisions made by council at this meeting. And it looks like I do not see anybody coming forward. I'm just going to check the clerk's inbox. Oh. There is a question. So this is from Ben McGilvery. First of all, congratulations on your re-election to the mayor and regional councilors and city councilors. I look forward to watching you through your term. I am watching in the City of Brampton special meeting and didn't hear who the 3 additional regional councillors and who is the alternate regional councillor. Could you please answer my question through the live stream? So through you, Mr. Mayor, my understanding from Council's resolution and the bylaws that have been passed, Councillors Santos, Councillor Keenan, and Councillor Brar have been appointed as the 3 additional regional councillors, with Councillor Singh appointed as the alternate.
Okay.
And I believe that is the only question. It is. So through you, Mr. Chair, the next item on the agenda would be bylaws, but bylaws 222 and 223 were adopted earlier by council as part of dealing with item 5.1 and 6.1. We're now at item 10, which is closed session. And we will require a motion to move into closed session to deal with the 3 items on the agenda that were distributed to members of council digitally this morning.
So a question, Peter, I've been going into closed session twice. No, I can't refer it. Yeah. Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, my advice would be these are separate and distinct special meetings, and new business can't be added, so they need to be treated as separate.
So we have to go into close twice?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Trying to save you the setup time, Peter. Okay.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, we do require a mover and seconder to move into closed session for 10.1, 10.2, and 10.3. And the reasons as cited in the Municipal Act, the exemptions, are on the screen.
Okay, moved by Councillor Paleshi, seconded by Councillor Power, move in camera.
15 minutes?
20.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would appreciate 20 minutes because this will be the first time this council has organized a closed session.
Okay, it is 3:58. We return in camera at 4:20. That's a fulsome 22 minutes.
So, Mr. Mayor, it is 6 o'clock. Council recess to 6.
Okay. We'll put on the screen.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll just report out. There were 3 items that council considered in closed session. The first was 10.1. The exception was 2E and F, which are litigation or potential litigation and solicitor-client privilege, advice that's subject to solicitor-client privilege. That item was considered. Information was provided in closed session to council, and no direction was given on that matter. 10.2 was an item for reasons for closed session 2C and K of Section 239.2 of the Municipal Act, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land, and negotiation to be carried on by or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board, a property matter. That item was considered. Information was provided in closed session, and direction was given to staff. Item 10.3, which is an open meeting exception under Section 239.2E and F of the Municipal Act, litigation or potential litigation, and advice subject to solicitor-client privilege, a litigation matter. That item was considered. Information was provided in closed session, and direction was given. And there may be a public motion arising from 10.3?
Yes.
Yeah. And we're just going to
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to declare a conflict on this item due to item named in the litigation.
Councilor Pertini? Yeah, thank you. The same with me. I've been on this allegation, so I'm going to declare conflict, please.
So Councillor Fortini and Councillor Medeiros have declared a conflict on the public resolution arising from 10.3 as they are named in litigation, and we're just going to bring that up on the screen in a moment. And this motion will require a mover and seconder.
I believe it's moved by Councillor Paleshi and seconded by Councillor Santos.
It's moved by Councillor Paleshi, seconded by Councillor Santos. And the motion is on the screen.
Okay. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Yep, okay. Okay, so now we're at the confirming bylaw, but we want to reopen the Hall of Fame, Sports Hall of Fame minutes. So if you could instruct us how to do so, Peter.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe that was item 6 point, excuse me, it was a motion moved by Councillor Singh. So we'll bring it back up on the screen. It's on the screen. No, my apologies. It is under 6.2. So it would be under 6.2, Charlotte. That was a continuation of the Sports Hall of Fame. And it would be a 2/3 vote to reopen Clause 6 of this resolution.
Is there 2/3 to reopen this clause in the Sports Hall of Fame? I see the 2/3, unanimous. We have a motion moved by Councillor Keenan, second by Councillor Paleshi to amend the committee selections to appoint Councillor Power to the Sports Hall of Fame in lieu of Councillor Keenan. All those in favor?
We just need a mover and seconder.
It was
Oh,
moved
sorry.
by
Okay,
Councillor
my
Keenan,
apologies.
second by
Yeah.
Councillor Paleshi.
Yeah.
And it passed unanimously.
Okay. we can move on to the confirming bylaw.
Our next item, business item 11, the confirming bylaw. I have a motion moved by Councillor Tour, seconded by Councillor Broad, to approve the confirming bylaw to confirm the proceedings and decisions from the meeting. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries. That takes us to our last item of business, item 12, adjournment. Council is next scheduled to meet in 30 minutes. Sorry? No earlier. Say 6:40. Following that, Wednesday, November 30th, and I wanted to, Peter, should you reference the calendar now? So, unless there's any objections from council, we're going to cancel the meeting of November 30th. That's our city council meeting. We'll proceed with the committee of council meeting on November 23rd, but the city is planning events on November 30th because that day at 10 a.m. Team Canada will be playing in our soccer tournament, and we are going to be having public showings in the city of Brampton. Awesome. That I know there are more than a few avid soccer fans here that will participate in. So that we'll proceed with November 23rd, but cancel November 30th, and so I wanted to give everyone a far enough advance notice of that for planning purposes.
For you, Mr. Mayor,
Wait until ratification? Or we could do the council meeting after the 23rd committee of council.
That's a good idea.
Immediately after, yeah.
The 23rd.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, council could call a special meeting for after the 23rd, after committee of council. There also is planning committee minutes, and planning committee is meeting on the 28th. Those minutes would normally go to the 30th meeting, and they would go.
So why don't we do it 5 minutes after planning committee?
5 minutes is not sufficient time.
30 minutes.
Yes.
Okay, so if we could, we need to put that in a motion?
We should, yes.
Okay. That the November 30th meeting of council be canceled and replaced with a meeting on, after planning committee meeting on November 28th.
Yeah.
It would be really just to ratify.
So the meeting through you, Mr. Mayor, the meeting on the 28th, the special meeting would only be for the purposes of ratifying the November 23rd Committee of Council minutes and the November 28th Planning and Development Committee
Correct.
recommendations.
Correct.
So just to clarify, because it is a special meeting being called for two specific purposes, once this resolution carries, additional business cannot be added to the agenda.
Yeah. Okay. Moved by Councillor Power, seconded by Councillor, who wants to get on the agenda? Councillor Vasante. Okay, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. This meeting is now adjourned, and we will return at 6:45.
Okay, thank you.